Chapter 137. The poison is on the pillow. As soon as she sat down, she heard Xiao Nanye's voice. Jiang Peihuan didn't want to say anything, but when she heard the man's voice, she subconsciously said it. As Jiang Peihuan spoke, Xiao Nanye remained silent, just quietly listening. After she finished, he spoke softly. Old Madame Shui is just trying to protect the second madam, so it's understandable. I understand, but I feel just uneasy. Seeing Jiang Peihuan go quiet, Xiao Nanye gently held her hand and spoke softly. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan nodded. She could understand old Madame Shui's thoughts, but she hated the real mastermind behind the scenes. Grandmother is not willing to pursue this matter. After all, this is the Shui family, so I can't say anything, but the mastermind behind the scenes is the one who benefits. Maybe not necessarily. As he spoke, Xiao Nanye played with Jiang Peihuan's fingers. This was his first time looking at a woman's hand closely. Jiang Peihuan's fingers were long and thin, but in his hand, they were very small. He gently played with her fingers, smiling as if he had found a precious treasure. Jiang Peihuan didn't notice his actions. When she heard his words, she asked, Xiao Nanye, what do you mean? Do your cousins know the poison is in the pillow? Yes. Seeing her nod, Xiao Nanye asked, then, will your second aunt hear about this? When she heard this, Jiang Peihuan understood. She had forgotten this detail. Jiang Peihuan was about to speak when she heard fast footsteps. She turned her head and saw Nanny Yun Gui coming towards them. The old servant greets His Highness King Cheng and young little Miss. Yun Gui's eyes were full of urgency, but when she saw Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan, she still stepped forward and seriously paid her respects. Xiao Nanye didn't say anything, and Jiang Peihuan hurriedly stepped forward to help her up, speaking softly, Nanny Yun Gui, why are you here? Is my grandma okay? Not old Madame Shui, it's the second madam. Second aunt. Jiang Peihuan looked at Xiao Nanye. She thought he was just a battlefield strategist, but he saw everything clearly at the mansion. Nanny Yun Gui wanted to speak, but looked at Xiao Nanye. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan turned her head to look at the man. I'll go there for a while. Millimeter. Seeing Xiao Nanye nod, Jiang Peihuan then looked at Yun Gui and said, let's go over there. Yun Gui hurriedly followed Jiang Peihuan's pace, and halfway there, Jiang Peihuan finally understood what was going on. After Shui Qi returned to his room, he told everything. As soon as Xu Yunyang heard that the pillow was poisoned, she immediately went to old Madame Shui's courtyard. Not only Xu Yunyang, but Wang Fengyi also went. Leveraging the accusation that Xu Yunyang plotted against her mother-in-law, Wang Fengyi continuously hurled insults at Xu Yunyang. Jiang Peihuan walked into the old madam's courtyard just in time to hear Wang Fengyi's insults. Xu Yunyang, my mother has always treated you well, how could you be so cruel? Sister-in-law, Yunyang would never do such a thing, please be careful with your words. Shui Hai also knelt beside Xu Yunyang. When he heard Wang Fengyi's insults, he began to speak with a gloomy look in his eyes. But it would have been better if he didn't speak. Upon hearing his words, the mockery and contempt in Wang Fengyi's eyes deepened. Second brother, the Xu family is nothing but a fallen family. Xu Yunyang keeps taking the Shui family's money to subsidize her mother's family, and you still want to protect her? Sister-in-law, stop talking nonsense. Yunyang and I are husband and wife, so my money is naturally her money. She took the money from the Xu family with my consent. HMPH, your money. The Shui family hasn't split up yet. Who gave you the right to say that money is? Everyone, be quiet. Old Madame Shui, who was sitting in the main seat, spoke with a look of anger upon hearing their arguments. When she spoke, everyone kept quiet. At this moment, Xu Yunyang looked at the old madam, full of guilt. Mother, it's all my fault that you are in such trouble. As she spoke, Xu Yunyang's eyes were filled with guilt and tears. Seeing the look in her eyes, the old madam said softly, Yunyang, this is not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Then she looked at Shui Hai, who was kneeling next to her. What are you waiting for? Help your wife get up. Mother, you're not being fair. It's clear that the pillow was a gift from my second sister-in-law. Now you've been poisoned, and you've decided it has nothing to do with her without even asking. I remember when I gave you a ginseng soup and you blamed me without a second word when your stomach didn't feel right. Wang Fengyi didn't look happy as she watched Shui Hai help Xu Yunyang stand up. When the old madam heard this, her face changed. She looked at Wang Fengyi and said coldly, "So, you think this matter should be pursued to the end?" For some reason, Wang Fengyi looked nervous when she looked at the old madam. But thinking about her plans, she nodded, "Of course. All right, since you want to pursue this matter, one will fulfill your wish. Huan come here." Old Madam Shui had noticed Jiang Peihuan come in earlier. Jiang Peihuan was standing at the door. When she heard the old madam, she walked over and bowed to her, "Grandmother. Huan your maid is skilled in medicine. Can she identify the herbs in my pillow?" "Yes, she can. Since you want to investigate, then investigate everything. Yunyang, tell us where you got the herbs for the pillow, what herbs they were, and who else touched them." "Yes, Mother." While Xu Yunyang had someone find the list of herbs, Yi Xiao had already identified all the herbs in the pillow. After comparison, there was no difference between the herbs in the pillow and those on the list. Even with such a result, the old madam was not surprised at all. Wang Fengyi also smiled proudly when she saw this scene. "Mother, it seems that rosemary was put in by second sister-in-law herself." "Aunt, how do you know that grandmother was poisoned by rosemary?" At this moment, Jiang Peihuan suddenly spoke up. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Wang Fengyi was stunned. After a few seconds, she said quietly, "I heard them say. Who are they?" Chapter 138. The mastermind Jiang Peihuan spoke subconsciously, but Wang Fengyi's face changed. "Huan what do you mean? Are you questioning me? Have you forgotten that I'm your elder?" "My apologies, Aunt Wang, I didn't mean anything by it, I was just asking. I remember now, when I brought the pillow to Mother's courtyard, sister-in-law came to see me and even checked the pillow." "What nonsense are you talking about? When did I ever check the pillow?" "Sister-in-law, the maids were there at that time. You said you wanted to make a pillow for Mother too and wanted to see the style of the one I made, so at that time, which maid?" Before Xu Yunyang finished, Wang Fengyi interrupted her. "Both of those maids fell ill and died 3 months ago," Xu Yunyang said quietly after a pause. When Wang Fengyi heard this, she looked very pleased. "So, you two don't have any proof?" Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan gave Yi Xiao a secret signal. Yi Xiao got the signal and gently pulled Shui Qi's sleeve. Although Shui Qi didn't know what Yi Xiao wanted, he followed her out. Shui Qi looked worried, he trusted his mom, but it was not his turn to talk. When he left with Yi Xiao, he asked directly, "What do you need from me?" "Young Master Shui, please take me to the first madam's courtyard." "To Aunt Wang's courtyard?" Shui Qi was confused. Given the situation, Yi Xiao didn't have time to explain and simply said, "Miss Jiang asked me to." When hearing this, Shui Qi just nodded, "Follow me." Everyone inside was watching Wang Fengyi and Xu Yunyang. No one saw Shui Qi and Yi Xiao leave. Wang Fengyi was pressing hard on Xu Yunyang, who looked very depressed and upset. When she didn't say anything, Wang Fengyi asked, "Do you have anything else to say?" While speaking, she glanced at Jiang Peihuan. But Jiang Peihuan ignored Wang Fengyi, as she saw Yi Xiao and Shui Qi coming back. Seeing Jiang Peihuan, Yi Xiao nodded. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan said, "Grandma, I have proof that Aunt Wang is involved in this matter." When they heard Jiang Peihuan, everyone looked at her. But Wang Fengyi was angry. "Jiang Peihuan, you." At this moment, Jiang Peihuan suddenly took a wooden box from Yi Xiao's hands. Upon seeing the box, Wang Fengyi was immediately stunned, her eyes filled with panic. "Huan what proof do you have?" Shui Hai quickly asked. Although the old Madam Shui didn't speak, she looked at Jiang Peihuan eagerly. Facing everyone, Jiang Peihuan softly said, "Cousin Qi found this in Aunt Wang's room. It contains rosemary." "Shui Qi, how dare you search my room without my consent? Do you have no respect for your elders?" Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Wang Fengyi's eyes were filled with resentment as she glared at Shui Qi. Shui Qi was shocked for a few seconds. Then he said loudly, "Aunt Wang, it was wrong to go into your room. But my mom never lies. If she says you touched the pillow, then you did. You, hearing this, Wang Fengyi was so angry she couldn't speak. She looked at Shuiji and Shuizhen who were silent. She yelled at them, "Are you two dead? Don't you see your mom being bullied?" Shuiji and Shuizhen had complicated expressions in their eyes. Seeing their faces, Shuiqi felt bad. But now he knew why Yi Xiao brought him along. If people knew it was Jiang Peihuan who searched Wang Fengyi's room, Jiang Peihuan would not be welcome in the Shui family. Seeing her sons remained silent, Wang Fengyi looked at Jiang Peihuan and said, "What can a single box prove? Aunt Wang, do you know that rosemary is produced in the western regions and is very rare in Qingju? All the rosemary in Qingju is less than what's in this box. Can you say this has nothing to do with you? Wang Fengyi, are you still not going to tell the truth?" Then, a loud angry voice came from the door. It was Xue Dao. He just came back from the army, still wearing his armor. He walked to Wang Fengyi, looking very angry. "How dare you poison my mom, you evil woman?" Wang Fengyi wanted to deny it. But hearing Xue Dao, she said, "Yes, one put the rosemary in the pillow." "So what?" Everyone was shocked to see Wang Fengyi's calm face. Jiang Peihuan frowned. She had always disliked Wang Fengyi, but she just thought Wang Fengyi was spoiled by the Wang family. She never thought she was not only spoiled but also evil. "Sister-in-law, she's your mother-in-law and your husband's mom. She's always been nice. How could you, Xu Yunyang, shut up? You're the last person who has the right to say that." Wang Fengyi suddenly yelled furiously. Xu Yunyang was shocked. Walking to her, Wang Fengyi said angrily, "Your family is poor. We're not equal. And her." Then, Wang Fengyi pointed at old Madame Xue. "I've been married into the Xue family for so many years, but you've always held the family authority. And my son had to grow up by your side. You treat me like this, but you give the family authority to Xu Yunyang, and let her child stay by her side. Why? Why do you treat me like this?" At the end, Wang Fengyi's eyes were full of hate. Old Mrs. Xue was quiet all along. Hearing this, she looked at Wang Fengyi. "So, you decided to poison me to death?" Even though the room was in chaos, the old Madame Xue remained calm. Looking at her, Wang Fengyi felt scared. She looked at the old madam and subconsciously said, "One didn't want to poison you to death, I just want to make you sick. Aunt Wang, do you know that if I hadn't come, grandmother would have died from the poison in 6 months? How is this possible? Jiang Peihuan, don't talk nonsense. Huan isn't lying." One asked the doctor. Everything she said is true. This was said by Shuiji. Looking at her eldest son who suddenly spoke, Wang Fengyi looked scared. "Alji, you?" Chapter 139. Wang Fengyi was punished at this moment. Shuiji's eyes were full of shame. Seeing his expression, Wang Fengyi was stunned. Shuiji did not look at her but instead knelt in front of the old madam. "Grandmother, one dares not plead for my mother, but I am willing to take her punishment." "Grandmother, and me." Then, Shuizhen also knelt next to his older brother. Seeing her 2 sons kneeling on the ground, Wang Fengyi was directly stunned. After a few seconds, she finally said with anger, "What are you doing? Clearly, I'm the one being treated unfairly. Why should I be punished?" "Wang Fengyi, shut up." As soon as Wang Fengyi's words fell, Xue Dao, who was on the side, yelled at her with gloomy eyes. For so many years, this was the first time Xue Dao had yelled at Wang Fengyi. Although Xue Dao was rough, he was very kind to his family. So even though Wang Fengyi was bossy, Xue Dao had never yelled at her. But today, knowing that she had poisoned his mother, Xue Dao could not accept it. However, it seemed that Wang Fengyi still did not understand the situation. Hearing Xue Dao's yell, her face turned uglier and stared at Xue Dao coldly. "Xue Dao, you dare yell at me, I will not only yell at you, but also divorce you." Xue Dao interrupted her before she finished. Upon hearing this, Wang Fengyi was stunned. After a few seconds of silence, her eyes showed a trace of panic. But looking at Xue Dao, she said angrily, "You want to divorce me? On what grounds can you divorce me? Because you poisoned your mother-in-law." Hearing this, Wang Fengyi wanted to retort subconsciously but couldn't find any words to rebut. And Shuizhi and Shuizhon, who were kneeling on the ground, heard these words and quickly kowtowed to Shuidao. Father, please calm down. Even though they knew their mother's faults, she was still their mother. They had to do something. Seeing his two sons, Shuidao also couldn't say anything harsh. He could only kneel beside his two sons and say to the old Madame Shui, Mother, I've failed you. Old Madame Shui had been silent all along. It was only then that she looked at Wang Fengyi and said, You said I favored Yunyang and was unfair to you, so let me ask you a few questions. Since you married into the Shui family, has anyone treated you badly? Nobody did anything to me, but you only need to answer my question. Before Wang Fengyi could finish her sentence, the old madam interrupted her. Facing the old madam, Wang Fengyi shook her head, No. Whether it is towards me, your mother-in-law, or your husband, you always have a fault-finding attitude. Have we ever argued with you? Of course not. Although old Madame Shui didn't treat her as well as Xu Yunyang, she had never made things difficult for her. As for Shuidao, he had the principle of not arguing with women. No. Wang Fengyi, you think your Wang family is superior and feel wronged marrying into the Shui family. But have you ever thought why, among many daughters in the Wang family, your parents chose you to marry into the Shui family? Isn't it because you were not the favored child in the Wang family? Your mother had 3 daughters, your elder sister is the apple of your parents' eyes, your younger sister is the child of their old age, only you were not cherished by your parents. When your mother was pregnant with you, she was happy, thinking you were a boy. But when you turned out to be a girl, your parents were disappointed. Originally, I didn't want to say these things. But since today's incident has escalated to this, one might as well tell you directly, it was not the Shui family who proposed marriage, but your mother who took the initiative to find me. Because if any prestigious family wanted to marry a daughter of the Wang family, they would first consider your elder sister, then your younger sister, but never you. Now, do you still feel wronged? Although old Madame Shui's voice wasn't loud, each word was like a knife, hurting Wang Fengyi deeply. Her face went pale instantly. She looked at old Madame Shui, wanted to say something, but couldn't. At this moment, old Madame Shui continued, If you don't want to stay in the Shui family, you can divorce Shuidao. No, I will never divorce. Hearing the word divorce, Wang Fengyi's eyes were filled with panic, as if she had realized something. She quickly knelt down, looking at old Madame Shui, she said in fear, Mother, please spare me this time, don't make me divorce my husband, even if it's for the sake of all Ji and all Zhon. When Wang Fengyi mentioned Shuizhi and Shuizhon, old Madame Shui's eyes softened a little. After a moment of silence, she looked at Wang Fengyi and said, For the sake of your 2 sons, let's forget about today's incident, but I want you to stay in the family temple for 3 months. Mother! When Wang Fengyi heard the first part of old Madame Shui's sentence, she let out a sigh of relief. But when she heard the last part, she immediately frowned. Old Madame Shui continued, In 3 months, if you haven't changed, you'll stay there longer. Oh yes, I see that Shui that girl, has also become a bit too arrogant due to your upbringing. Let her go with you, at least she can take care of you. No one commented on old Madame Shui's decision, but Jiang Peihuan thought it was because Shui went to see Xiao Nanya the night before. Alright, you all can go, Huan stay with me. Everyone looked worried, but seeing old Madame Shui was tired, they didn't say anything. Everyone in the Shui family slowly left old Madame Shui's courtyard, only Jiang Peihuan walked to old Madame Shui's side, sat down on the couch at her feet, reached out and held old Madame Shui's hand, Grandma, I'm not bothered about my cousin's issues. Because you aren't, one have to do this. Although King Cheng pardoned Shui for your sake, the Shui family can't slow you down. As she spoke, old Madame Shui gently patted Jiang Peihuan's head. Feeling the warmth of old Madame Shui's palm, Jiang Peihuan gently leaned her head against old Madame Shui's leg. Thank you, Grandma. After a moment of silence, Jiang Peihuan continued, Grandmother, you must already know who poisoned you. Jiang Peihuan didn't look at old Madame Shui's reaction as she leaned on her. Chapter 140, Lin Mengyao's plan. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, old Madame Shui revealed a hint of helplessness and anger in her eyes. It was because I knew that your aunt was not the real murderer that I let her off lightly. However, Huan how did you know? The rosemary is only available in the western regions. Where did your aunt get the rosemary from? It's clear if you think about it. Huan you're really smart. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, old Madame Shui looked somewhat surprised and then smiled. However, there was a hint of coldness in Jiang Peihuan's eyes when she heard this. Grandma, if I'm not mistaken, the Wang family must be the ones who planned all this behind the scenes. Do we let it end like this? Having learned from this experience, I believe your aunt will not be easily manipulated by others. As for me, 1 foot is already in the grave, so let's turn a blind eye. If it comes to being shrewd, no one can surpass old Madame Shui. Yet, Jiang Peihuan knew that Madame Shui's reluctance to pursue further was only for the sake of family harmony. Jiang Peihuan didn't say anything else. Instead, she held old Madame Shui's hand tightly. With Huan around, I'll make sure you live a long life, Grandma. Alert! Upon hearing this, old Madame Shui seemed less worried and smiled. That night, Jiang Peihuan did not return to her own courtyard. Instead, she stayed with old Madame Shui. While Shui's mansion was in total chaos, Jingdo was not peaceful either. In Qing Mansion. How is it? Xiao Juanhao asked Pei coldly as he walked in. Pei Wu looked upset. He bowed to Xiao and then said quietly, Your Highness, eldest Miss Jiang has gone to Qingju safely. She's safe. Upon hearing Pei Wu's words, Xiao Juanhao didn't know whether to feel disappointed or relieved. Only he knew that he had heaved a sigh of relief for a moment. Pei Wu nodded and continued, Currently, eldest Miss Jiang has already arrived at the Shui mansion, so we can't do anything. Did Lin Xingchen fail? Where is he now? Hearing this, Pei Wu's expression turned even uglier. Xiao Juanhao had a bad feeling upon seeing Pei Wu's face and asked with a cold gaze, What happened? Your Highness, Lin Xingchen has joined the army under King Cheng. What did you say? Xiao Junhao's eyes were filled with gloom. He knew about Lin Xingchen's identity long ago and wanted him to attack Jiang Peihuan to gain leverage over Lin Xingchen, so he could use him for his own purposes. Xiao Juanhao was aware of Lin Xingchen's abilities. But now, everything had been ruined by Xiao Nanye. Your Highness. At this time, a gentle voice came from the entrance of the living room. It was Lin Mengyao. Seeing her appear, Pei Wu couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Although Xiao Junhao's expression was still very ugly, his face somewhat softened. With the help of Lin Ruohai and Lin Mengyao recently, Xiao Juanhao had finally collected enough money to refurbish the palace. Emperor Qiming also had a slight change in attitude towards him because of this. So when Xiao Juanhao saw Lin Mengyao, he said gently, Why are you here all of a sudden? I was just passing by the mansion, so one came to see your highness. This was clearly an excuse, but no one was going to expose it. Seeing that Xiao Juanhao remained silent, Lin Mengyao took a seat next to him, then spoke softly, Your Highness, I've learned about what you and Guard Pei have been discussing. I have a plan that might help. What ideas do you have, Yaro? Feel free to share them. After spending some time together, Xiao Juanhao had come to understand Lin Mengyao's personality. Although she was gentle, she had her own thoughts. Upon hearing Xiao Junhao's words, Lin Mengyao said softly, Eldest Miss Jiang is a skilled martial artist and has the protection of the dark guards that King Cheng left her, making it hard to harm her. However, you could target other people from the Jiang family. Lin Mengyao's voice was very soft, but clearly heard by Xiao Juanhao and Pei Wu. Upon hearing this, Xiao Junhao's eyes lit up. Grasping Lin Mengyao's hand, a smile appeared in Xiao Junhao's eyes. Yaro, you really are extremely clever. Your Highness must be joking. I just wanted to help your Highness resolve your worries. Lin Mengyao left the prince's mansion after a short while. After she left, the smile on Xiao Junhao's face instantly disappeared. He looked at Pei Wu and said coldly, Tell Jianmai to keep an eye on everyone in the Jiang family. Once there's any news, inform me immediately. Yes. Jiang Peihuan was unaware of what had happened in Jingdo. Perhaps she was tired from the journey, or because she didn't sleep well the previous night, but Jiang Peihuan slept soundly that night in the old madam's courtyard. By the time she woke up, it was already bright outside. Without disturbing anyone, Jiang Peihuan tidied up a bit and left the room. Just as she reached the main hall, she heard a familiar voice. Xiao Nanye was chatting with the old madam. As soon as Jiang Peihuan reached the door, he heard her. He subconsciously turned to look at the door. As Xiao Nanye looked at Jiang Peihuan, she looked back at him. As their eyes met, both of them showed a faint smile. At first, the old madam had been slightly worried when she learned of Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nanye's engagement. But now, seeing the way they interacted, she felt reassured. Waving towards Jiang Peihuan, the old madam softly said, "Why are you up so early? I specifically told the maids not to disturb you." Stepping forward to pay her respects to the old madam, Jiang Peihuan then held her hand. "I've slept more than usual." "That's good. King Cheng just arrived. I've already told Yun Gui to prepare breakfast. Let's have breakfast here with King Cheng in a while." "All right. Old madam, breakfast is ready." Actually, breakfast had been ready for a while, and Yun Gui was just waiting for the old madam's orders. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan was up, she came forward to say. Then, the three of them went to the dining room. Several small dishes were ready on the table. There weren't many, just 5 or 6 dishes. After sitting down, the old madam looked at Xiao Nanye and said, "I hope your highness will forgive us. The food in our mansion is always simple. I'm sorry if it's not enough." "There's no need for that, old madam. When one was campaigning outside, one ate and lived with my soldiers, so I'm not picky about food." Although Xiao Nanye didn't speak much, he was very approachable when talking to old Madam Shui. Chapter 141, Sending Shui Yu away after having breakfast, the old madam asked Jiang Peihuan to return to her courtyard. Of course, Xiao Nanye also left with her. The smile in the old madam's eyes deepened as she watched the two of them leave. At first, one was worried that Huana might face hardships in the future, but now I'm not worried anymore. Young little miss is blessed. One think His Highness is very gentle and considerate to young little miss. Nanny Yun Gui chuckled softly when she heard the old madam's words. Jiang Peihuan was unaware of the discussion behind her. After leaving the old madam's courtyard, she looked at the man beside her and asked, "Why did you come to my grandmother's courtyard so early this morning?" "I was waiting for you in the courtyard last night. Later, I heard from Yi Xiao that you slept in the old madam's courtyard. One wanted to look for you, but I thought it would be inappropriate, so one waited until this morning. Being in Shui Mansion is not as convenient as when you were in Jiang Mansion." At first, Jiang Peihuan felt touched by his words, but after hearing the last sentence, she couldn't help but glare at the man beside her. "So you're addicted to climbing walls. If the girls in the Jingdo knew about your highness' love for climbing walls, one don't know how many hearts would be broken. Whether they are sad or not doesn't matter to me. Only you matter to me, Huan." Although it was sweet talk, Xiao Nanye's eyes were very serious when he said them. Seeing the seriousness in his eyes, Jiang Peihuan smiled. Just as she was about to speak, an unpleasant voice interrupted. "I'm not going to the family temple. My mom made a mistake, not me. Why should I go? One won't go." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned. She subconsciously looked in front of her and saw Shui Yu standing at the corner with anger in her eyes, while Shuiji stood at the side with displeasure in his eyes. There were a few scratches on the back of Shuiji's hand, which were caused by Shui Yu. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned again. "This is grandmother's order. You have to go even if you don't want to. Moreover, mother has always treated you well. Why aren't you and third brother going? You're her real sons." Shui Yu cut Shuiji off before he finished talking. Hearing this, anger flashed in Shuiji's eyes. He had naturally proposed to go too, but was scolded severely by Shui Dao. Just as Shuiji was about to speak, a gentle voice sounded in his ear. "Cousin, are you unwilling to go to the family temple because you don't want to take care of eldest aunt?" Jiang Peihuan didn't want to get involved, but she still approached seeing Shuiji's situation. When Shui Yu heard Jiang Peihuan's voice, she got angrier. She wanted to yell at Jiang Peihuan, but she saw Xiao Nanye. Even though Xiao Nanye had hurt her recently, she still shyly greeted him when she saw his handsome face. "Greetings, Your Highness King Cheng. Have you forgotten what I said before?" Xiao Nanye cut off Shui Yu and spoke with a gloomy expression. Seeing Shui Ru's panicked face, Xiao Nanye continued, "I said one don't want to see you again. Did you not take my words seriously? In that case, I'll kill you now." As his words fell, Xiao Nanye opened the fan in his hand. Seeing the blade at the end of the fan, Shui Ru's eyes were filled with terror. "Your Highness King Cheng, please forgive my little sister." Shui Ji, who was standing aside, saw this scene and quickly stood in front of Shui Yu. Even when facing Shui Ji, Xiao Nanye didn't appear interested in what he had to say. Upon hearing Shui Ji's words, the man spoke with a deep voice. "What? Has the Shui family treated my orders as if they were nothing? Your Highness, that's not the case. Grandmother ordered my younger sister to go to the family temple to take care of our mother, so that's why she came out of the room. Is that so?" As he said this, Xiao Nanye looked at Shui Yu. Shui Yu was stunned when she met Xiao Nanye's gaze. Shui Ji, who was standing beside her, quickly pulled her back. Shui Yu nodded quickly. "Yes, one came out because I needed to go to the family one temple to take care of my mother. Wang Fengyi had already sent Shui Dao away last night, and because it was late, the Shui family did not call for Shui Yu, which led to the events of today." Upon hearing this, Xiao Nanye put away his folding fan. But when he turned to look at Shui Yu, his expression instantly turned cold. "If that's the case, why haven't you left yet? I will take my little sister away now." Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Shui Ji quickly held Shui Ru's hand and started leading her out of the mansion. Shui Yu wanted to struggle, but Shui Ji whispered to her, "If you don't follow me obediently to the temple, His Highness will kill you right here." Upon hearing this, Shui Yu didn't dare to struggle anymore. Jiang Peihuan watched Shui Yu leave and looked at the man beside her with amusement in her eyes. Seeing her look, the man said, "I'm helping your cousin here." Jiang Peihuan gave a faint smile but didn't say anything, even though the man had taken hold of her wrist. Jiang Peihuan was puzzled when she saw Xiao Nanye head to the gate. "Xiao Nanye, where are you taking me? Everyone says that Qingju is different from Jingdo, so today we will take a good look around Qingju city." After saying that, Xiao Nanye took Jiang Peihuan and left the Shui mansion. Deputy General Liu wanted to come too, but Xiao Nanye stopped him. "One want to be alone with Huan so you don't need to come." Seeing that Deputy General Liu was still hesitating, Xiao Nanye continued, "With me here, no one can hurt her." Upon hearing this, Deputy General Liu silently stepped back. As for Yi Xiao, she was preparing the antidote for old Madame Shui. When Jiang Peihuan came to Qingju that day, she was only thinking about Madame Shui, so she didn't pay attention to the surrounding on the street. Now, taking a look outside, Jiang Peihuan noticed that the street was very bustling. Both sides of the street were filled with stalls. Although it couldn't compare to the capital, it was still very lively. "Do you want to take a look around?" Xiao Nanye took Jiang Peihuan to the street and then asked softly. Looking at the lively crowd, Jiang Peihuan nodded. Whether in her past life or this life, Jiang Peihuan rarely went shopping like this. Looking at the passing crowd, her heart seemed to liven up. "Young master, you want to choose a hairpin for your wife." When Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan passed by a small stall, a clear voice sounded. Hearing the word wife, Xiao Nanye's lips curved into a smile. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, he whispered, "Wife, how about looking at some hairpins?" Jiang Peihuan also heard the stall owner's words. She had originally wanted to explain, but considering that they already had an engagement, she decided not to. Chapter 142, Wooden Hairpin. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan did not refute, the smile in Xiao Nanye's eyes deepened. At this moment, the stall owner who spoke earlier continued, "Young master, your wife is really beautiful." The person who spoke was a young woman. Beside her was a young man who was concentrating on carving a hairpin in his hand. The two were clearly a couple. When the stall owner's husband saw someone coming over, he glanced at Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan. When he saw Jiang Peihuan, there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly lowered his head to focus on his work. The stall owner looked very delicate and pretty. When she praised Jiang Peihuan's beauty, her tone was very sincere, making people involuntarily feel comfortable. Although Jiang Peihuan initially had no interest in these hairpins and accessories, but she became more patient at this moment. In comparison, Xiao Nanye chose very carefully. Finally, the man reached out and picked up a wooden hairpin in the corner. The wooden hairpin was polished very smoothly and there were not many decorations on it. But upon closer look, one could see a sentence carved on it. Seeing the sentence, Xiao Nanye turned to Jiang Peihuan and asked, "Huan what do you think of this hairpin?" The wooden hairpin was made of date wood, not worth much, but well crafted. Upon hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded, "Good. I'll take this wooden hairpin." As soon as Jiang Peihuan spoke, Xiao Nanye took out a silver ingot and placed it on the stall. Then, before Jiang Peihuan could react, Xiao Nanye inserted the wooden hairpin into her hair. "Huan look, this hairpin suits you very well." As he spoke, Xiao Nanye had already presented a bronze mirror to Jiang Peihuan. The black wooden hairpin was inserted diagonally into Jiang Peihuan's hair bun, simple yet stylish. Xiao Nanye had already given many jewels to Jiang Peihuan, but at this moment, looking at the wooden hairpin, she had a strange feeling. Looking at her reflection in the bronze mirror, Jiang Peihuan laughed softly, "One like it very much." Hearing her words, the stall owner said with a smile, "Young master, since your wife likes it, 111 give you back the change." "No need." Hearing the stall owner's words, Xiao Nanye casually responded, then led Jiang Peihuan away by the hand. The stall owner was stunned, and then said with a smile, "Thank you, young master and madam. Husband, look, we've made a good profit today." The young man who had been busy carving the hairpin heard his wife's words and nodded with a smile. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan also smiled. "Huan I'm returning to Jingdo tonight." Jiang Peihuan, who was eating, looked surprised when she heard this. She looked at the man and whispered, "You're leaving tonight?" "Yes." The man nodded and continued, "There's been some trouble in the court recently. The emperor asked me to return." One understand. After that, neither of them talked about this matter again. By the evening, they had returned to the entrance of the Shui mansion. But Xiao Nanye did not go in. Instead he turned to Jiang Peihuan and said, "I won't go in to say goodbye to the old madam this time." "Okay, I'll tell my grandmother." Deputy General Liu had already brought out the horse. Seeing him, Xiao Nanye whispered, "Take good care of your young mistress." "Rest assured, Your Highness." Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Deputy General Liu bowed. Seeing this, Xiao Nanye jumped onto his horse and pulled Zui Yun's reins. He gave Jiang Peihuan one last glance, and patted Zui Yun's head. In an instant, Zui Yun started running. Watching the man ride away, Jiang Peihuan's eyes were a little complicated. When Xiao Nanye's figure disappeared around the corner, Deputy General Liu, who was standing at the side, looked at Jiang Peihuan and said, "Eldit miss, let's go inside." "Yes." Jiang Peihuan nodded and turned to leave. For some reason, when she saw Xiao Nanye leave, she felt a faint sense of reluctance. In the past, she never seemed to have this feeling. After returning to her room, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but take off the wooden hairpin on her head. When she placed the hairpin in her hand, she noticed the words carved on it, "Wish to win someone's heart, and to never be apart till old." Seeing these words, Jiang Peihuan's eyes showed a hint of tenderness, and her sense of loss seemed to have faded significantly. Xiao Nanye, who had left the Shui mansion, was heading to the Jingdo. As soon as he left Qingju City, he saw Han Feng waiting there. Han Feng was ordered to wait here. Hearing the sound of horse hooves, he immediately looked up. Seeing the person on horseback, Han Feng was delighted. "Master? Did anything happen in the Jingdo?" Seeing Han Feng, Xiao Nanye nodded and then asked softly, "I've already made arrangements for Lin Xingchen and the others. As for the Prince Qing, other than gathering the funds, there seems to be no other movements." Hearing this, Xiao Nanye frowned. But he didn't say anything. The master and servant both headed towards the Jingdo, while at this time, in the general's mansion, someone left quietly. An hour later, Pei Wu entered Xiao Junhao's study. Looking at the person reading, Pei Wu bowed and then spoke in a low voice, "Your Highness, old Madame Jiang plans to visit Lingyun Temple tomorrow." Hearing this, Xiao Juanhao put down his book. After a moment of silence, he spoke softly, "One here, Jiang Peihuan and old Madame Jiang have a good relationship." "I heard so. If something happens to old Madame Jiang, I suppose she'd be very upset, wouldn't she?" To this, Pei Wu had no response. The study room was quiet for a moment before Xiao Juanhao turned to Pei Wu and said, "You'll handle this. Remember, this time only success is acceptable, no failure." "Yes." General's Mansion. Chrysanthemum Hall. "Mother, how about I accompany you to Lingyun Temple tomorrow?" Shui Yang said softly as she looked at old Madame Jiang. But Madame Jiang shook her head, "No need, one can go alone. You've been busy lately, no need to accompany me." As she spoke, old Madame Jiang glanced at Zhu Rongfang and Liu Xiu. Because of Jian Mai's affairs, Zhu Rongfang held some grudges against old Madame Jiang and remained silent. Liu Xiu, who had been ignored by old Madame Jiang due to Liu Xin's matters for several days, wanted to go but didn't dare to say anything. Old Madame Jiang frowned and said, "All right, you can all go back now." A moment later, only old Madame Jiang was left in the Chrysanthemum Hall. The next morning, after having breakfast, old Madame Jiang boarded the carriage to Lingyun Temple. In the carriage, besides old Madame Jiang, there was also Granny Shu. "Old Madam, the third lady really respects you." Chapter 143. Liu Xin appears. Upon hearing Nanny Zu's words, old Madame Jiang said softly, "Although I've been dissatisfied with her for so many years, I have to admit that she's indeed good, but—" "Old Madam, be careful." Before old Madame Jiang could finish her sentence, the carriage suddenly stopped. Seeing this, Nanny Shu quickly supported old Madame Jiang, who almost bumped into something. Once old Madame Jiang steadied herself, Nanny Shu questioned the driver, "Old Liu, how did you drive the carriage? Don't you know that old Madame Jiang is in the carriage?" As she spoke, Nanny Shu directly lifted the curtain, but the scene in front made her face change immediately. What is this?" Old Madame Jiang also saw the scene outside. A group of masked men suddenly appeared with knives. Old Liu had already left the carriage. The servants of the Jiang family all knew some martial arts, but they were not match for these rogues who suddenly appeared. When old Liu was blocking the people from coming this way, he shouted at Nanny Shu, "Quickly take the old madam away." "Well, stop them." Most of the servants in the Jiang family had lost their relatives in battles, and the Jiang family had taken them in. So these people were very loyal. Even though they knew they were no match for these people, they still asked Nanny Shu to take old Madame Jiang away. "Old Liu." But as old Liu finished speaking, he was slashed with a knife. Seeing this scene, Nanny Zus was full of worry, and old Madame Jiang's face turned uglier. "Hurry up and leave." Old Liu shouted with all his might. Nanny Shu, with tears in her eyes, held old Madame Jiang's hand and whispered, "Old Madam, we should leave quickly." "Think of leaving? It's not that easy." Just as they were about to turn around and leave, they saw two black-clad men coming this way. What do you want to do?" "My old madam is from the General's mansion." We're here for the people in the General's mansion." Two men were walking towards them. Nanny Shu stepped in front of old Madame Jiang to protect her. But before she could finish speaking, the men stopped her with a cold voice. Upon hearing this, old Madame Jiang frowned. Pushing Nanny Shu away, she looked at the two of them coldly. "Who sent you here?" Although old Madame Jiang felt extremely anxious inside, she was very calm. Seeing her composure, the earlier rogue laughed. "The old madam from the Jiang family is truly something. Even facing death, she can still stay so calm. Hurry up and save them." Just as old Madame Jiang was about to speak, she heard a familiar voice. She turned to see Liu Xin, who had lifted the carriage curtain. Seeing Liu Xin stirred complex emotions within old Madame Jiang. Liu Xin was also planning to go to Lingyun Temple today but had stumbled upon this scene instead. Fearing for Liu Xin's safety, the Liu family had hired quite a number of guards for her. These guards were not weak in martial arts, but they were still a bit inferior to these rogues. Besides, Liu Xin didn't bring many people with her. Seeing her side losing, Liu Xin directly walked over to old Madame Jiang and whispered, "Old Madam, it's too dangerous here, we should leave quickly." Saying this, Liu Xin led old Madame Jiang towards a small path. Seeing this, Nanny Shu quickly followed. "Why are you here? Old Madam, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's think of a way to get out of danger first." Liu Xin's eyes were filled with fear, but she still tried her best to remain calm. Seeing her expression, old Madame Jiang said in a low voice, "Those people are here for me. This has nothing to do with you. You, old madam, one can't ignore you." Liu Xin didn't dare to take the main road, so she took old Madame Jiang to the small road. At this moment, the three of them had already walked into a small forest. Seeing that there was no movement behind them, Liu Xin looked at Nanny Shu and said, "Nanny, please take off the old madam's clothes." "Miss Liu, why is that? Those people might be chasing after us. I'll wear the old madam's clothes and walk that way. You hide with the old madam somewhere else." While speaking, Liu Xin had already started to take off her cloak. When Nanny Shu heard this, she immediately said, "Miss Liu, you don't look like the old madam. How about this? 111 put on the old madam's clothes, and you hide with the old madam." Yuzhen. Old Madame Jiang's eyes were filled with worry when she heard Nanny's words. Nanny Shu smiled. "One have served you my whole life. 1 am willing to die for you." As she spoke, Nanny Shu had already put on the old madam's cloak. Seeing that she was about to leave, old Madame Jiang grabbed Nanny's hand tightly. "Be careful. Old madam, rest assured. I still have to take care of you, one won't die." Nanny Shu reassured. She then bowed to Liu Xin. "Miss Liu, 111 entrust my old madam to you. Don't worry, I'll definitely protect the old madam." Then, the three of them split up. Liu Xin brought the old madam into the forest. It had been a long time since old Madame Jiang had walked so far. Soon, she started panting with exhaustion, but she persisted with gritted teeth. However, Liu Xin stopped when she heard old Madame Jiang's panting. After looking around at the environment, she squatted down in front of the old madam. "Old madam, we have to go deep into the forest, I will carry you." "How can you carry me with your weak body?" the old madam questioned. Liu Xin's figure was thin, while old Madame Jiang's figure was plump. However, Liu Xin laughed when she heard this. "Don't worry, old madam. One won't drop you. I used to go to the shop often, and one followed my elder brother to some places. My stamina is quite good." Old Madame Jiang could not walk anymore. Hearing Liu Xin's words, she lay on her back. "If you are tired, you must tell me." "Yes." Liu Xin nodded and carried old Madame Jiang into the forest. The mountain path was extremely difficult to walk. After a while, a layer of sweat appeared on Liu Xin's forehead. Seeing the sweat on her forehead, old Madame Jiang's eyes revealed a complicated look. Liu Xin didn't know how long she had been walking. All she knew was they had to keep moving forward. However, she suddenly heard the sound of hurried footsteps. Hearing this voice, Liu Xin's expression changed. Liu Xin carefully put old Madame Jiang down and looked around. Then, she helped old Madame Jiang to walk behind a big tree. Breaking some branches, Liu Xin covered old Madame Jiang with them and whispered, "Old madam, stay here and don't come out. Someone comes, I'll lure them away." As Liu Xin was about to walk away, old Madame Jiang grabbed her hand. "Be careful," old Madame Jiang whispered when she saw Liu Xin's confused expression. Hearing the old madam's words, Liu Xin smiled. "Don't worry, I'll come and find you soon." Then, Liu Xin went down another path, deliberately leaving some traces on the branches behind her. Chapter 144. Jumping off the cliff. Not long after Liu Xin left, two men in black came over. Old Madame Jiang hid behind a tree and looked at the two men, clenching her hands tightly. "Over here," one of them said excitedly when he saw the traces left by Liu Xin. The other person looked at it and nodded. "Let's go." Old Madame Jiang's eyes were full of worry as she watched the two of them chase after Liu Xin. She wanted to follow them but was afraid of wasting Liu Xin's efforts. Meanwhile, Liu Xin had already reached the top of the mountain. Suddenly, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her and turned around to see two men in black running towards her. Her eyes were filled with panic. Then, she fell to the ground in fear. It's not that old woman. The man who had caught up to her looked at Liu Xin on the ground and angrily said. The other person standing beside looked at Liu Xin's beautiful face and said, "How dare you ruin our plans? I'll teach you a lesson today." As he spoke, he moved toward Liu Xin and grabbed her ankle. "Laro-san, what are you doing?" "What am I doing? It's not easy to meet a young lady from a rich family every day. I heard these girls are all well-fed and well-clothed. I wonder how they taste compared to the women in the brothel," Laro-san replied. "Do you want to?" the other man asked. "Haha," the man called Laro-san sneered and looked at Liu Xin. Liu Xin wasn't naive. From their conversation, she knew what the man was planning. When she saw the man's vicious look, her eyes were filled with fear. She raised her leg and kicked the man's hand away. Then, she ran towards the top of the mountain. Laro-san was caught off guard and fell to the ground. The other man saw this and laughed mockingly. "Laro-san, can you handle it? Bitch, I'll kill you today." With a fierce look in his eyes, Laro-san chased after Liu Xin. He picked up the knife in his hand and stabbed it at Liu Xin's calf. The sudden pain made Liu Xin fall to her knees. Seeing this, Laro-san took out his long knife and taunted, "Run, why aren't you running now?" Liu Xin was on the ground, crawling backward, leaving a trail of blood. "Laro-san, you go first," the other man said. "Okay, I'll go first," Laro-san replied, taking off his clothes. Liu Xin's face turned pale when she saw this. She looked around and realized that they were already at the top of the mountain. There was only one road in front of her and a cliff behind her. Looking at the people approaching her, Liu Xin could only pull out the golden hairpin on her head and aim the tip at her neck. Liu Xin said in a hoarse voice, "Don't come any closer, or 111 kill myself in front of you." "Ha ha ha." The man laughed as if he had heard a good joke, but his eyes were full of mockery. He looked at Liu Xin and said coldly, "For so many years, I've only slept with living people. I've never tried dead ones. Why don't you satisfy me? You, don't come any closer." Liu Xin's eyes were full of despair as Laro-san approached her. Turning her head, Liu Xin looked at the cliff behind her. At this moment, Liu Xin thought of Jiang Changbai. "Jiang Changbai, goodbye," she thought. Liu Xin's eyes filled with despair. At that moment, Jiang Changbai had already climbed halfway up the mountain, reaching the place where old Madame Jiang was hidden. "Grandmother, Miss Liu," old Madame Jiang was exhausted, but she didn't dare to move when the two men in black didn't come down. Hearing Jiang Changbai's voice, old Madame Jiang excitedly called out, "Changbai, over here, I'm here." "Grandmother?" "Old Madam." Jiang Changbai's men had already found Nanny Shu, and upon seeing old Madame Jiang's disheveled appearance, Nanny Shu burst into tears. Jiang Changbai tightly held onto the old madam's hand and asked softly, "Grandmother, are you hurt?" "No, I'm not injured." "That's good." Hearing old Madame Jiang's words, Jiang Changbai couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. "Grandmother, let's go. I'll take you down the mountain first." Saying this, Jiang Changbai bent down in front of old Madame Jiang, preparing to carry her down. However, old Madame Jiang shook her head and said, "Changbai, you must go find Miss Liu first." She went up the mountain, and not long after she left, two rogue went up after her. "I worry, Nanny Shu, take good care of grandmother." Before old Madame Jiang could finish speaking, Jiang Changbai's expression changed. He softly instructed Nanny Shu and then ran towards the mountaintop. On the mountaintop, Liu Xin was already in despair and on the verge of collapse. However, Laro-san's face was full of smiles. "What's wrong? You can't do it." Liu Xin's hand, holding the hairpin, was trembling. When she saw Laro-san approaching her, she suddenly got up from the ground and ran towards the cliff, jumping off. "Liu Xin." The moment she jumped down, Liu Xin seemed to have heard Jiang Changbai's voice, but very quickly, she smiled, wondering why he would have come. However, the voice became clearer and clearer, and Liu Xin couldn't help but open her eyes, only to see a familiar face. The wind blew Jiang Changbai's hair, and he reached out his hand, saying softly, Don't be afraid, I'm here. As his words fell, Jiang Changbai reached out and held Liu Xin. The two of them were falling down straight. Jiang Changbai gripped Liu Xin tightly in his arms, his back facing the cliff. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a hint of green, and his eyes lit up. As they fell, he grabbed the green object. Their descent stopped suddenly. It's all right, there's a tree here. Hearing Jiang Changbai's words, Liu Xin looked at the tree in front of them. Although it was called a tree, it was actually a small sapling on the edge of the cliff. The trunk was only as thick as an arm. Jiang Changbai was holding onto the tree trunk, but the tree trunk was already shaking under the weight of the two of them. I'm afraid this tree won't be able to hold our weight. No matter. Looking at the height under his feet, Jiang Changbai looked at Liu Xin and said in a low voice, Liu. Miss Liu, do you believe me? He subconsciously wanted to call her by her name. Liu Xin did not know what Jiang Changbai had in mind, but hearing his words, she nodded. I trust you. That's good. Hearing Liu Xin's words, a faint smile appeared in Jiang Changbai's eyes. Then, he let go of the tree trunk. The two of them started falling again. As they fell, Jiang Changbai pointed his toes. But when they landed, the momentum was too great, and they both fell on the ground. Chapter 145, Jiang Changbai arrives. The bottom of the cliff was full of rocks. When Jiang Changbai fell, his instinct was to hold Liu Xin close, cradling her in his arms. The two of them rolled for a long distance before they stopped. Are you all right? Both spoke simultaneously when they stopped. After a moment of silence, Jiang Changbai spoke first. I'm fine. How are you? I'm also. Liu Xin began to respond, but a sudden, sharp pain in her calf made her cry out. Jiang Changbai, following her gaze, noticed the blood staining her foot. Following her line of sight, Jiang Changbai saw the blood on her feet. He hurriedly crouched down to examine her wound, but she held his hand, stopping him. A hint of blush spread across her face. She felt embarrassed at the thought of Jiang Changbai lifting her skirt to check the injury. Misunderstanding her hesitation as fear of pain, he gently reassured her, Don't worry, I'll be gentle. One won't hurt you. I'm not scared of the pain, it's not appropriate. Her voice was barely audible by the end of her sentence. However, Jiang Changbai's hearing was excellent, so he still heard it. As if he had thought of something, he stood up and then looked at Liu Xin, saying, During special times, we need to make special exceptions. Most of the female members of my mother's flying feather army are women. When they get injured on the battlefield, they also need timely treatment. If everyone is concerned about propriety, it would delay the treatment of many people. But, when Liu Xin heard Jiang Changbai's words, her eyes showed a hint of conflict and hesitation. Let's leave this place first. It's about to get dark, Jiang Changbai said as he squatted down in front of Liu Xin. Your leg is injured and you can't walk. I'll carry you. Although Liu Xin was still somewhat hesitant, Jiang Changbai had already gripped her hand, effortlessly hoisting her onto his back. This was the first time he had ever carried a woman other than his sister. Liu Xin was so light, he could hardly feel her weight. Even in the wilderness, she found comfort in Jiang Changbai's presence. Jiang Mansion. Chrysanthemum Hall. Doctor, how is she? The old madam had already been taken to Chrysanthemum Hall, and Shui Yang immediately had someone fetch a doctor. She looked at the doctor who came out from the inner hall and hurriedly asked. First madam, don't worry. The old madam was just startled and has already fallen asleep. There's nothing serious, the doctor reassured her. That's good. Mother, should we inform eldest sister about this? The person who spoke was Jiang Xijin. After she heard the news of the old madam's accident, she immediately left the military camp with Jiang Changbai. Hearing her younger daughter's words, Shui Yang nodded. Even though your grandmother is fine, we should still inform Huan Xijin, get someone to send a letter to Qingju. I understand, mother. After Jiang Xijin left, Shui Yang did not leave Chrysanthemum Hall but stayed outside. Besides Shui Yang, there was also Liu Xiu guarding outside. Knowing that Liu Xin had an accident, Liu Xiu's eyes were full of worry. Seeing the expression in her eyes, Shuiyang stepped forward and comforted her softly. "Third sister, don't worry. Chang Bai will definitely find Xin and bring her back safely." "I know. Thank you, sister," Liu Xiu replied gratefully. In the mountains, Jiang Changbai and Liu Xin had already settled in a cave. Jiang Changbai lit a fire and sat down in front of Liu Xin before finally speaking to her. "If we don't treat the wound on your leg soon, it might get infected. I'll help you treat the wound first," Changbai offered. "Okay," Liu Xin nodded. With her approval, Jiang Changbai gently lifted her leg onto his lap. He raised her skirt and rolled up her trousers to examine her wound. Jiang Changbai had only seen the blood on her skirt previously. Now that he saw the wound on her calf, Jiang Changbai subconsciously frowned. He had seen many serious injuries before, but Liu Xin's fair skin made the palm-sized wound on her calf looked particularly gruesome. "It might hurt a bit, so bear with it," Jiang Changbua said. She nodded again. Seeing her nod, Jiang Changbai cleaned the blood around the wound with a wet handkerchief and applied a common medicinal powder. As soon as Jiang Changbai sprinkled the medicine on the wound, he felt a sharp pain in his arm. It turned out that Liu Xin had gripped his arm tightly. "It'll be over soon," he reassured her, continuing to treat the wound despite the urgency in his eyes. After he bandaged the wound, Jiang carefully adjusted Liu's trousers back into place. "Done," he said. Hearing him, Liu Xin relaxed her grip on his arm, causing him to wince in response. Her face flushed with embarrassment at her strength. "I'm sorry," she said. "No worries, I can handle it," he replied. "Although I have already applied medicine to your wound, your injury is still severe. You should see a doctor when we get back," Jiang Changbai said. "It's okay. As long as you've put on medicine, there's no need for a doctor." Liu Xin could still convince herself to let Jiang Changbai apply medicine on her, but she couldn't bear the thought of other men seeing her leg. Jiang Changbua immediately understood what Liu Xin meant. Upon hearing her words, he said softly, "It's okay. I'm sure my mother will send a message to Huan since my grandmother was frightened. Huan maid has medical skills, she can examine you when we get back." Didn't Sister Jiang go to Qingju? It would take at least 2 to 3 days to travel back and forth from Qingju, Liu Xin said. "In Qingju. Yi Xiao, has all the poison in my grandmother's body been removed?" Looking at Yi Xiao, who was examining her grandmother, Lu Yuni asked softly. After withdrawing her hand, Yi Xiao nodded. "Yes, all the poison have been removed from the old madam's body. She just needs a good rest now. Huan it's all thanks to you this time." "Yeah, Huan without your maid, who knows what would have happened to your grandmother?" As Jiang Peihuan listened to the words of Xue Dao and Xue Hai, she smiled and said, "Uncle Dao, Uncle Hai, it's what one should do. There's no need for such formalities. Okay, it's getting late. Let Huan rest now." With the absence of Wang Fengyi and Xue Ayu, the entire Xue family was harmonious. Hearing the conversation between Jiang Peihuan and the others, old Madame Xue said softly. As soon as Madame Xue spoke, everyone started urging Huan to rest. "Grandmother, I'll go back first," Jian Peihuan said softly after she bowed to old Madame Xue. Leaving old Madame Xue's courtyard with Yi Xiao, Jiang Peihuan had just reached her own courtyard when she saw an anxious Deputy General Liu approaching. "Eldest miss, something happened." "What's wrong?" "There's news from the mansion. It's said that the old madam was attacked." Chapter 146. Returning to the capital. What did you say? Upon hearing Deputy General Liu's words, Jiang Peihuan's face fell instantly. Deputy General Liu didn't say anything. Instead, he handed the note in his hand to Jiang Peihuan. The note was written by Jiang Xijin and sent by pigeon. Knowing that the old madam was fine, Jiang Peihuan heaved a sigh of relief, but she was still a little worried. Seeing the change in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Deputy General Liu spoke softly. "Miss Jiang, should we return to the mansion? I believe Madame Xue would understand your reasons and not blame you." Upon hearing Deputy General Liu's words, Jiang Peihuan lapsed into a pensive silence. After a moment, she replied in a gentle whisper, It's rather late today. One wouldn't want to disturb my grandmother. Well, bid her farewell tomorrow morning. Yi Xiao, prepare a list of all the medicinal herbs required for my grandmother's recuperation. I'll hand it to my second aunt tomorrow. Understood, eldest miss. As her mind was preoccupied, Jiang Peihuan had a restless night. By the break of dawn, she quickly freshened up and, with Yi Xiao in tow, made her way to old Madame Shue's courtyard. Since the elderly typically required less sleep, old Madame Shue was already up by the time Jiang Peihuan arrived. Seeing Jiang Peihuan arrive so early brought a warm smile to old Madame Shue's face. Huan, why have you come so early? Haven't Yi Xiao assured that my body is perfectly fine? Grandmother, 1 a.m. here to bid you farewell. Farewell? You're heading back to Jingdo? One thought you were planning to stay with me for a while longer. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Madame Shue's eyes began to well up with tears. Seeing old Madame Shue like this, Jiang Peihuan felt a pang in her heart. Gently taking her grandmother's hand, she murmured, Grandmother, my other grandmother was attacked in Jingdo. Attacked? Was your grandmother injured? Upon hearing about the assault on old Madame Jiang, old Madame Shue's eyes filled with concern. Seeing her worry, Jiang Peihuan quickly reassured her, Please don't worry, grandmother. My other grandmother is not severely injured. She was merely startled. Well, that's a relief. Since your grandmother was attacked, you should go back. Who's going back? Old Madame Shue had barely finished her sentence when Shue Qi's voice echoed from the entrance. Upon seeing him, a spark of hope ignited in old Madame Shue's eyes. Huan, I'm not at ease with you returning to Jingdo alone. How about this? Let Shue Qi escort you back. Huan, you're returning to Jingdo? Why not stay longer in Qingju? After learning of the situation from old Madame Shue, Shue Qi struck his chest, saying, In that case, 111 escort Huan back to Jingdo. One haven't seen my aunt for a while. Grandmother, how about asking mother to prepare some items from Qingju? I can bring them to my aunt. She hasn't been back to Qingju for many years, she probably misses it a lot. Yes, indeed, have people prepare more items for Yang as well, including things for the old madam of the Jiang family and the other two madam. Shortly after, everyone from the Shui family arrived. Jiang Peihuan took the medical prescription from Yi Xiao's hand and directly passed it to Xu Yunyang, then quietly said, Second aunt, this prescription contains the medicines my grandmother needs for recuperation. I'll have to trouble you in this time. You child, since when have you become so formal with me? Huan, you need not worry about your grandmother. We will take good care of her. As for you, I don't know when I'll be able to see you again in Jingdo. Xue Dao, a strapping man, unexpectedly had red-rimmed eyes at this moment. All right, when Huan grand wedding comes around, we'll be heading to the Jingdo anyway. That's right. Huan will be getting married in 2 months. Upon mentioning this, the spirits of everyone from the Shui family lifted again. By the time Jiang Peihuan left the Shui family, it was already afternoon. Aside from the 4 of them, there were also 3 large carriages filled with items the Shui family had prepared for Shui Yang and the others in the Jiang family. Although Jiang Peihuan was eager to return to the Jingdo, she didn't decline these items, as they were a testament to old Madame Shue's maternal love. However, traveling with 3 carriages made the journey extremely slow. After they left Qingju City, Jiang Peihuan immediately turned to Deputy General Liu and said, Cousin Qi and I will go ahead with Yi Xiao. You follow behind at a slower pace, ensuring these items get back home. Yes, eldest miss. Deputy General Liu had no objections to Jiang Peihuan's arrangement. Thereafter, Jiang Peihuan, with Xue Qi and Yi Xiao, set out towards Jingdo. Xue Qi rode at Jiang Peihuan's left. Seeing her atop her horse, he softly chuckled, Huan, one never knew your horsemanship was so skilled. Cousin Qi, did you forget I've been to the battlefield as well? Hearing Xue Qi's comment, Jiang Peihuan chuckled softly in response. I actually did forget, but hearing you say it brings back memories. By the way, Huan, is there anything fun to do in Jingdo these days? Both Jiang Peihuan and Xue Qi were skilled horse riders, which allowed them to carry on their conversation while on horseback. The trip from Qingju to Jingdo, Even if they traveled fast, it would still require around 2 days. But Jiang Peihuan, Xue Qi, and Yi Xiao arrived at the general's mansion late at night. Yi Xiao, knock on the door. The door of the general's mansion was tightly shut. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's command, Yi Xiao dismounted and knocked on the door. The door quickly opened, and the gatekeeper, upon seeing Jiang Peihuan on her horse, quickly came forward to pay his respects. Eldest miss, you're back? Have elder brother and Miss Liu returned? In Jiang Xijin's letter, Jiang Peihuan already knew that Liu Xin had saved old Madame Jiang. Upon hearing Jian Peihuan's question, the gatekeeper nodded and quickly said, eldest young master and Miss Liu are back. They came back just this afternoon. Understood, thank you. With a nod, Jiang Peihuan led Xue Qi into the mansion. Upon entering the courtyard, Jiang Peihuan turned to Xue Qi and said, Cousin Qi, it's rather late. I'll take you to see grandmother tomorrow. Rest early for tonight. I will guide you to elder brother's garden for rest. Just have a servant lead me there. You've had a long day too, you should rest early. I'm not tired. I'll take you there. Saying so, Jiang Peihuan led Xue Qi towards Jiang Changbai's courtyard. As they arrived at Jiang Changbai's courtyard, they found the lights within still lit. Jiang Peihuan and Xue Qi shared a glance and stepped inside together. Elder brother? Huana, you're back. All, Qi. Upon hearing a noise, Jiang Changbai immediately opened his door. Seeing Jiang Peihuan, his eyes lit up with a smile. But when he noticed Xue Qi standing next to her, his eyes shone with pure excitement. Changbai, it's been too long, said Xue Qi. Xue Qi stepped forward, delivering a playful punch to Jiang Changbai, and two of them hugged each other. Watching this warm reunion, Jiang Peihuan also displayed a hint of a smile. Jiang Changbai and Xue Qi were born only a few hours apart. This led to them never addressing each other as brothers, instead they preferred to call each other by their names. Chapter 147, Return from Qingju. I'm going to stay in the mansion for a few days. Let's find a time to spar, Xue Qi said. All right, no problem, Jiang Changbai replied with a smile. Jiang Changbai smiled as he heard Xue Qi's proposal. Such was the bond of male friendship. Witnessing the camaraderie, a smile appeared on Jiang Peihuan's face. She softly said to her brother, elder brother, since you're here, I'll leave cousin Qi in your care. I'm off to visit Xin at our third aunt's courtyard. Are you going to see Miss Liu? Yes, she's injured, I sent she. I'm taking Yi Xiao with me to see her. In that case, 111 accompany you. Just as Jiang Changbai offered to go with her, Jiang Peihuan was quick to object, elder brother, it's quite late now. It's not appropriate for you to visit Xin. Grandmother already disapproves of your relationship with Xin. If you visit her at this hour and if she hears about this visit, it will only make things worse for Xin. Hearing this, Jiang Changbai frowned, but he knew that what Jian Peihuan said was correct. He did not say anything, but nodded. All right, then I'll bring our Qi inside. Don't worry, if anything happens to Xin, I'll send someone to inform you, Jiang Peihuan assured. Okay. Seeing her nod, Jiang Peihuan bowed to Xue Qi. Cousin, sorry for the inconvenience. 111 come find you again tomorrow. Sure, go handle your business. I'll be just fine. Hearing this, Xue Qi waved his hand dismissively and followed Jiang Changbai into the courtyard. As he watched Jiang Peihuan leave, Xue Qi took hold of Jiang Changbai's hand. Changbai, it seems like you have a special place in your heart for Xin. Is she the one you fancy? Xue Qi was just being inquisitive. But Jiang Changbai, surprisingly, nodded in agreement. Indeed, she's the one I have feelings for. Which family is she from, and what is her personality like? Seeing Jiang Changbai nod, the curiosity sparked in Xue Qi's eyes. Always eager and curious, Xue Qi, considering Jiang Changbai his close friend, eagerly asked more. Given the circumstances surrounding Liu Xin, Jiang Changbai felt somewhat disheartened. When Xue Qi asked, he explained the details of his situation with Liu Xin. Xue Qi listened attentively without interrupting. Seeing Jiang Changbai's distress, he couldn't help but offer some advice. Changbai, if you have feelings for Miss Liu, why not have aunt and uncle propose a marriage? There's no need to be so troubled. On hearing Xueqi's suggestion, Jiang Changbai shot him a helpless look and replied, the Liu family is a merchant family after all. The Jiang family is quite sensitive by nature. If one were to marry her, it would stir up unnecessary doubts and suspicions. Moreover, grandmother will definitely not allow it. But in the end, all these are mere external factors. Seeing Jiang Changbai's puzzled expression, Xueqi continued, even if you don't marry Miss Liu, the Jiang family will still be walking on eggshells. As for old Madame Jiang, this is a matter of your marriage. If you insist, I think old Madame Jiang will eventually agree. Xueqi grew up in Qingju, where the local people had a strong and fierce nature. Therefore, the things that Jiang Changbua was concerned about didn't seem like a big deal to him. Hearing Xueqi's words, Jiang Changbai fell silent. Xueqi didn't pay attention to the fact that Jiang Changbua didn't respond and went straight into the room, saying, tonight, I will sleep in your room. Jiang Peihuan did not know about the conversation between Xueqi and Jiang Changbai. At this moment, she had already brought Yi Xiao into elegant garden. Liu Xiu was also in Liu Xin's room. When she saw the injury on her leg, Liu Xiu's eyes were filled with worry. Such a severe injury. What if it leaves a scar? Liu Xin, sitting on the bed, replied nonchalantly, Aunt, don't worry, even if it leaves a scar, it's not a big deal. Don't talk nonsense. You're a girl. How can there be scars on your body? Third aunt, don't worry. I won't let Xin have any scars. Upon hearing the voice, Liu Xin and Liu Xiu simultaneously turned towards the entrance. Seeing Jian Peihuan entering, both of them smiled. Huan Sister Jiang. Jiang Peihuan stepped forward and bowed to Liu Xiu. Then, she looked at Liu Xin and said softly, Xin thank you so much. Sister Jiang, you're making a big deal out of it. I didn't do much. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan did not say anything else. Instead, she looked at Yi Xiao and said, examine the injury on Miss Liu's leg. Yi Xiao walked forward and sat down by the bed to unwrap the bandage on Liu Xin's leg. Upon seeing the wound, Jiang Peihuan's eyes flashed with a bit of surprise. Time had done little to soothe the injury. The once fresh wound was now an alarming white. Under the lamplight, it was a harrowing sight. Is it really this severe? Liu Xiu wasn't around when Liu Xin was treating her wound, so when he saw the wound on her leg, Liu Xiu's eyes were filled with concern and worry. Yi Xiao carefully checked Liu Xin's wound and reapplying medication before expertly rebandaging it. After Yi Xiao finished bandaging, Liu Xiu quickly said, Yi Xiao, tell me, will the injury leave a scar on Xin's leg? Miss Liu's wound is quite deep. Once it heals, it's likely to leave a scar, Yi Xiao explained. A scar? Liu Xiu's expression changed instantly. Liu Xin, in spite of her attempts to reassure Liu Xiu, was understandably upset. The prospect of a scar on her leg brought a touch of sorrow to her eyes. Seeing that they were all upset, Jiang Peihuan looked at Yi Xiao and asked, can the scar be removed with Shuhen glue? It could, but only miracle Dr. Ivy can make it. However, he has always been missing. It's fine. One have a way. In her past life, by pure chance, Jiang Peihuan had learned how to make Shuhen gel. However, now was not the time to disclose it. After she finished speaking, Jiang Peihuan reassured Liu Xiu, third aunt, there's no need to worry. I will bring over the Shuhen gel later. With it, Xin leg won't have any scars. Huan thank you. Liu Xiu did not find it strange that Jiang Peihuan could get the Shuhen glue. After all, King Cheng's fondness for Jiang Peihuan was common knowledge among the members of the Jiang mansion. Third aunt, there's no need for such formality with me. With that, Jiang Peihuan turned to Liu Xin, Xin I need to head back now. Tomorrow morning, I'll bring Yi Xiao to change your bandage. All right, Sister Jiang, please take care. Jiang Peihuan bid farewell to Liu Xiu, then left the elegant garden. Given the late hour, Jiang Peihuan decided not to visit Yang Lin and disturb Shui Yang. Instead, she returned directly to her own courtyard. Upon entering the plum garden, She noticed the light in her room was already lit. Without a second thought, Jen Peihuan had already guessed who it was. Regardless of whether it was Yu or Lu they were now very used to Xiao Nanye coming to the plum garden at night. Chapter 148, Warm Desserts. Therefore, when Jiang Peihuan walked into the room, she saw a man sitting at the table reading a book. "You're back." When Jen Peihuan walked into the courtyard, Xiao Nanye heard her footsteps. When she walked into the room, the man put down the book in his hand. "When did you arrive?" Jiang Peihuan walked towards the man and spoke softly. "An hour ago." As he spoke, the man took out an oiled paper bag from in front of him and placed it on the table. Xiao Nanye said softly, "One guessed that you probably didn't eat anything properly on your way here, so I brought some desserts for you. Try it." The man carefully opened the oiled paper bag. Jiang Peihuan saw the snow-white dessert inside. It was Osmanthus cake. Jiang Peihuan wasn't hungry at first, but when she saw the desserts on the table, she suddenly felt a little hungry. She sat down next to the man and picked up a piece of dessert and took a bite. It wasn't very sweet, but it had a light fragrance that Jiang Peihuan liked. The dessert was still warm, and Jiang Peihuan felt a warm current flow through her heart when she thought that Xiao Nanye had kept the dim sum warm against his chest. She selected another piece of dessert, offering it to the man. "This dessert is rather good. Would you like to?" Before she could finish her sentence, Xiao Nanye opened his mouth and ate the cake from her hand. His lips brushed against her fingertips, and Jiang Peihuan felt as if she had been electrocuted. She quickly withdrew her hand. Seeing her reaction, Xiao Nanye smiled and said softly, "The dessert is indeed delicious." Jiang Peihuan felt that the man's words seemed to have a hidden meaning, but she wasn't sure. After eating a few pieces of the dessert, Jiang Peihuan no longer felt hungry. Just as she was about to speak, she couldn't help but yawn. Xiao Nanye looked up and saw the fatigue in her eyes. He said, "It's getting late, Huan. You should rest early. I'll leave first." Xiao Nanye had originally planned to chat with Jiang Peihuan, but when he saw the fatigue in her eyes, he didn't say anything. Jiang Peihuan was indeed tired from the journey from Qingju. She nodded when she heard Xiao Nanye's words. A moment later, Xiao Nanye left Jiang Peihuan's room. Han Feng was still on the tree outside the courtyard. When he heard the sound, he jumped down. He landed next to Xiao Nanye and couldn't help but ask, "Master, why did you come out so early today? Did eldest miss chase you out?" When Xiao Nanye heard Han Feng's words, he gave him a cold glance and then said coldly, "What? Are you saying that Huan is difficult to deal with?" Seeing Xiao Nanye's threatening expression, Han Feng quickly shook his head. "How can that be? Eldest miss is the gentlest woman I've ever met." "Humph." Xiao Nanye snorted and turned around to leave the plum garden. Seeing this, Han Feng hurriedly followed, but he did not dare to say anything else. Instead, he silently shut his mouth. Although old Madame Shui took great care of Jiang Peihuan in the Shui mansion, she still couldn't adapt to the new environment, so she didn't sleep well during her stay there. When she returned to her familiar place, Jiang Peihuan slept soundly. Yu knew that Jiang Peihuan was tired, so she didn't let the little maids in the courtyard disturb her. When Jiang Peihuan woke up, it was already late morning. When she opened her eyes, Jiang Peihuan was still a little dazed. "Eldest miss, are you awake?" Yu was guarding the door. When she heard the commotion inside, she spoke in a low voice. Hearing Jen Peihuan's voice from inside, Yu pushed the door open and walked in. Yu placed the toiletries in her hand on the shelf before walking towards Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan had already sat upright when she awoke and noticed Yu. She asked softly, "What time is it now? Why didn't you wake me?" "Eldest miss, you had a tiring day yesterday. One thought it best to let you rest well through the night," responded Yu. As they spoke, Yu had neatly arranged Jiang Peihuan's clothes by her side. With Yu's assistance, Jen Peihuan changed into a set of elegant green attire. Yu moistened the handkerchief and wrung it out before offering it to Jiang Peihuan. Accepting the handkerchief from Yu, Jiang Peihuan gently patted her face with it before handing it back. "Eldest miss, do you want to have breakfast?" Yuo asked. Perhaps due to eating the desserts last night, Jiang Peihuan didn't feel hungry. Thinking about the conversation she had with Liu Xin last night, she shook her head and said, "No need. Go and call Yi Xiao. I'll go to third aunt's courtyard to check on Xin Er." "As you wish." Moments later, Jiang Peihuan, accompanied by Yi Xiao, made her way towards Liu Xiu's elegant garden. When she reached the entrance of the courtyard, Jiang Peihuan saw a few maids standing guard by the door. Jiang Peihuan instinctively quickened her pace. Just as she reached Liu Xin's room, she heard Liu Xiu's anxious words, "Mother, don't worry. I will send Xin Er back to the Liu family as soon as possible. No hurry." Before Liu Xiu could finish, old Madame Jiang interrupted her softly. Liu Xiu was stunned when he heard the old madam's words. Not only Liu Xiu was surprised, but Jiang Peihuan also showed a hint of surprise. However, when she thought about the reason why Liu Xin got injured this time, Jiang Peihuan felt relieved. Jian Peihuan understood her grandmother. Although old Madame Jiang had a rigid personality, she was also kind-hearted. Regardless of the circumstances, Liu Xin had saved her life, so old Madame Jiang wouldn't kick Liu Xin out. As expected. Seeing Liu Xiu's confused expression, old Madame Jiang said softly, "No matter what, Miss Liu was injured while trying to save my life. How can I kick her out at this time? Grandmother, you are truly kind-hearted." Upon hearing the voice, old Madame Shui quickly turned around and saw Jiang Peihuan striding in. The old madame's eyes were full of smiles and she quickly held Jiang Peihuan's hand. "My dear, when did you come back?" "I came back last night, but it was already late. I didn't wish to disturb you, grandmother. When I heard that grandmother was attacked in Qingju, one immediately rushed back. You must have suffered greatly during this ordeal, grandmother." Noticing the concern in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, old Madame Jiang felt a surge of warmth within her. She gently patted Jiang Peihuan's hand, her voice soft, "I am fine. This time, we owe a great deal to Miss Liu. If not for her, I fear my life would have been in the hands of the King of Hell." "Grandmother, don't speak such nonsense. You are blessed and destined to live a long life." Well. If Huan Er believes that I will live a century, then I shall strive to do so. Yi Xiao, please help Xin Er change her bandages." "Understood." After speaking with old Madame Jiang, Jiang Peihuan asked Yi Xiao to help Liu Xin change her bandages. "Will this wound leave a scar?" Liu Xiu had already seen the wound on Liu Xin's leg yesterday, so she was mentally prepared today. However, it was the first time for old Madame Jiang to see it. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 149, The Old Madame's Change of Attitudes. Seeing the palm-sized wound, the old madame's eyes were filled with worry. "Don't worry, old madam. The wound may appear severe, but it's just a flesh wound. It won't leave any scars." Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, she heard Liu Xin's voice. Upon hearing Liu Xin's words, old Madame Jiang heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she looked at Yi Xiao, she still said softly, "Go ahead and treat Miss Liu. If you need any medicinal herbs, just take them from the mansion." "Yes, old madam." "Thank you, old madam." Upon hearing old Madame Jiang's words, Liu Xin, who was leaning against the headboard, quickly expressed her gratitude. Hearing Liu Xin's words, old Madame Jiang looked at Liu Xiu and said, "During this period of time, let Miss Liu stay in the mansion to recuperate. Also, prepare a gift of thanks. I will personally visit your brother to thank him in the future." "Mother, there's no need for that. Xin Er is part of the younger generation. No matter who it is, they should help when they encounter such a thing. There's no need for you to personally visit." Upon hearing Liu Xiu's words, the look in old Madame Jiang's eyes became much better, but she still insisted, "Miss Liu has saved my life. It's only proper that I personally express my thanks." Seeing Liu Xiu about to protest, Madame Jiang turned to Jiang Peihuan and said, "Huan Er, please escort me back." "Yes." Jiang Peihuan respectfully bowed to Liu Xiu, gave a nod to Liu Xin before reaching out to support old Madame Jiang. When they were about to reach the chrysanthemum hall, Jiang Peihuan thought of Xue Qi. She quickly looked at old Madame Jiang and said, "Grandmother, when one came back this time, grandmother asked cousin Qi to escort me. He is still waiting in eldest brother's courtyard to meet you. I will go and bring him over now." "You silly girl, how can you neglect the guest? Go get him quickly." Upon hearing old Madame Jiang's words, Jiang Peihuan hurriedly ran to Jiang Changbai's courtyard. Arriving there, she found the pair engrossed in a sparring match. It seemed their sparring match from last night had escalated into a real fight today. Seeing that the two of them were fighting, Jiang Peihuan did not interrupt but chose to watch from the side. After all, both Jiang Changbai and Xue Qi had extensive battlefield experience and formidable martial arts skills. "Eldest miss, you're here." When Chang'an saw Jiang Peihuan, he quickly brought over a cup of tea. Accepting the tea, Jiang Peihuan asked softly, "How long have elder brother and cousin Qi been fighting?" "From this morning until now." Hearing Chang'an's response, Jiang Peihuan's eyes reflected a touch of helplessness. She took a sip of her tea, handed the cup back to Chang'an, and shouted, "Elder brother, cousin Qi, stop fighting. Grandmother is waiting for you." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xue Qi and Jiang Changbai stopped. Xue Qi raised his hand to wipe the sweat from his forehead. Then, he looked at Jiang Changbai and said, "I thought that you would definitely neglect your martial arts after returning to Jingdo. I didn't expect you to improve so much." "You're not falling short either," Jiang Changbai replied. By the time the two of them followed Jiang Peihuan to the chrysanthemum hall, it was already half a cup of tea's time later. Old Madame Jiang sat at the main seat. When she saw the two young men walking in together, her eyes beamed with delight. Little Xue Qi pays his respect to old Madame. Looking at Xue Qi, who was bowing to her, old Madame Jiang hurriedly said, "Quick, get up." Once Xue Qi stood upright, Madame Jiang gestured at her side and said with a smile, "I remember the first time I saw you, you were just a child. Now, look how much you've grown. I heard from Huan that old Madame Xue's body has been unwell recently. Is she feeling better now?" "Old Madame, grandmother's body is already much better, all thanks to the servant girl by Huan side." Initially, one intended for Huan to stay with old Madame Xue for a while longer, but unfortunately, I encountered such an unexpected incident. "Old Madame, your concern is appreciated. However, when Huan's wedding takes place, my grandmother will be coming to Jingdo. You will have a chance to meet then." "Yes. At that time, I will definitely pay a visit and have a heart-to-heart talk with old Madame Xue. Grandmother will definitely be happy to see old Madame." Madame Jiang had always held a fondness for Xue Yang. In addition to Xue Qi's courtesy and generosity, a warm smile hardly left the old Madame's face. Looking at Xue Qi, old Madame Jiang smiled and said, "It's rare for you to come here, so you should stay in the mansion for a while. Your aunt and uncle often go to the military camp. You can get Huan and Changbai to take you around Jingdo." "Indeed, that's my intention as well," Xue Qi responded. Seeing that the old Madame and Xue Qi were chatting very well, Jiang Peihuan quickly said, "Grandmother, I'm hungry. Why don't you let Nanny Shu prepare lunch?" Jiang Peihuan did not dare to say that she had not eaten breakfast yet. Hearing Jiang Peihuan say that she was hungry, old Madame Jiang quickly looked at Nanny Shu and said, "Yuzhen, quick, hurry up and get someone to prepare lunch." After Nanny Shu left, old Madame Jiang looked at Xue Qi and said, "Ah Qi, why don't you have lunch in my courtyard today?" "Yes, then I'll have to trouble old Madame." The old Madame was used to taking an afternoon nap, so after lunch, Jiang Peihuan and the other two left the chrysanthemum hall. When they walked out of the courtyard, Jiang Peihuan suddenly looked at Jiang Changbai and said, "Elder brother, one fear the recent attack on grandmothers was no mere coincidence. We must thoroughly investigate the matter. There were many people from the Jingdo who went to Lingyun Temple to offer incense, and most of them were high officials and nobles, so that road was very peaceful. The sudden emergence of bandits, Jiang Peihuan deduced, hinted at an underlying conspiracy." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Changbai nodded in response. "Father and mother have already handed this matter over to me. I have also started the investigation. I believe that there will be news soon." As soon as Jiang Changbai finished speaking, he saw Yi Xiao walking over. Eldest Miss, Han Feng is here. Given Han Feng's constant companionship with Xiao Nanye, Jiang Peihuan expressed a measure of surprise upon hearing his arrival. Jiang Changbai's eyes were filled with surprise. What could have brought him here? Could it be that King Cheng sent him here? By then, Han Feng had reached Jiang Peihuan. Miss Jiang, the master has entrusted me to deliver this letter to you. Han Feng stepped forward, extending a courteous bow to Jiang Peihuan. He then retrieved a letter from within his sleeve, presenting it to her with both hands. Looking at the letter in Han Feng's hand, Jiang Peihuan reached out and took it. Looking at him, Jiang Peihuan asked softly, "Does your master have anything else to say?" "Master has requested that you peruse the letter first." In response, Jiang Peihuan promptly opened the letter. Despite its brevity, the content caused her complexion to shift abruptly. "Huan what's wrong?" Jian Peihuan didn't say anything but handed the letter to Jiang Changbai. Then, Jian Peihuan looked at Han Feng. Meeting her gaze, Han Feng continued, "Master said that the great general has already handed over his military power, so it's not appropriate to use the soldiers in the army. If the eldest miss wanted to go and exterminate the bandits, Master would prepare soldiers for the eldest miss." Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 150, Luring the Snake Out of Its Hole. The letter from Xiao Nanye contained information about the bandits who attempted to murder the old Madame Jiang. These bandits had not only tried to murder old Madame Jiang, but they were also involved in a series of horrendous crimes. Due to their formidable martial arts skills, the local authorities were unable to apprehend them despite numerous attempts. These individuals have no respect for the law whatsoever. Jiang Changbai, seething with rage, remarked as he read through the letter. Xueqi, already aware of the situation, responded coldly upon hearing Jiang Changbai's words. Such ruthless bandits are not uncommon in Qingju. However, it's surprising to find them lurking even under the emperor's feet in Jingdo. Jiang Peihuan remained silent but turned to Han Feng and said, "Go back and inform your master that I will be there tonight. Please ask him to prepare the men for me. Eldest miss, to be honest, Master has already prepared the men for you." Hearing this, Jian Peihuan's eyes revealed some surprise. An hour later, Jiang Peihuan saw Lin Xingchen and the others in the suburbs outside the city. Seeing Jiang Peihuan, Lin Xingchen led his men to dismount and bowed to her. "Greetings, eldest miss." "Lin Xingchen, are you the one sent by Xiao Nanye?" "Yes." Jiang Peihuan had initially assumed that Xiao Nanye would provide her with military support. However, she did not expect him to send Lin Xingchen directly. "Lin Xingchen?" Hearing this name, a flicker of confusion crossed Jiang Changbai's eyes before he questioned Lin Xingchen. "Are you a member of the Lin family?" "Yes, indeed. I belong to the main branch of the Lin family." "So, you are Lin Shuai's legitimate son, the young marshal of the Lin family." Xueqi made this statement. Hearing him, a flicker of surprise crossed Lin Xingchen's face, followed by a smile. "I didn't expect anyone in this world would still remember my father." There was a tinge of sadness in Lin Xingchen's smile. Recalling Lin Xingchen's accomplishments from his past life, Jiang Peihuan murmured, "With your efforts, it isn't an impossible task to resurrect your father's name." Jiang Peihuan's words visibly shocked Lin Xingchen. However, he quickly regained his composure. Addressing Jiang Peihuan, Lin Xingchen said, "Eldest miss, since you intend to eradicate the bandits tonight, we should set off immediately. It's essential to familiarize ourselves with the enemy's terrain in advance." "Very well." Upon Jiang Peihuan's agreement, Lin Xingchen and his men mounted their horses. Witnessing this, Jiang Changbai asked his sister, "Huan should we inform our parents about this?" "Let's talk about it later." Jiang Changbai wanted to say something else, but Xueqi interjected, "Changbai, if aunt and uncle knew about this, they might stop us from going. I don't want to miss such a golden opportunity." Saying this, Xueqi spurred his horse forward. Seeing this, Jiang Changbai held his tongue and followed the crowd. Soon, Jiang Peihuan and the others arrived before a mountain. As they looked up from the foot of the mountain, they could spot some dwellings at its summit. This observation alone convinced Jiang Peihuan that they weren't dealing with ordinary bandits. While most bandits nested within the mountain, it was unusual for them to settle on its peak. First, it would cost a lot of financial and material resources, and there's a risk of getting trapped. However, there is an upside. The position is easily defensible and typically hard to attack. Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Changbai, Xue Qi, and Lin Xingchen all stared at the mountaintop, each engrossed in their thoughts. For a long time, no one spoke. Jiang Peihuan turned to the other three and asked, "Do any of you have a plan? The best way is to attack with fire, but this would potentially cause a large-scale fire, which would harm the surrounding people." Lin Xingchen said. Jiang Peihuan remained silent before her gaze moved to Jiang Changbai and Xue Qi. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's gaze, Xue Qi spoke first. "If it were me, I would choose to infiltrate their camp and gather information, and then devise a longer-term plan. Elder brother, what about you?" "My thoughts are the same as our chief's. We don't know the terrain or how many people there are, so it's not wise to attack rashly." Hearing their answers, Jiang Peihuan nodded but did not say anything. Seeing this, Lin Xingchen immediately asked, "Eldest miss, do you have any good ideas?" "I'm afraid it's very difficult to take the initiative to gather information. These people have placed their base on the mountain peak, which means that they are very cautious. As for fire attacks, this method would not work here. I do have an idea, but I need your cooperation." "What is it?" "Lure the snake out of its hole and let them take the initiative to bring us up the mountain." "How is this possible?" "The conventional method definitely won't work." "But what if we bribe them?" Facing the three people's puzzled expressions, Jiang Peihuan briefly explained her thoughts and then continued, "Cousin Qi and I pretended to be visiting relatives from other places. Elder brother, General Lin, go to them and tell them that we brought a lot of gold and silver. Money sways the heart. I believe they will willingly guide us in." The three of them had no objections to Jiang Peihuan's plans. When the sky had just turned dark, Lin Xingchen and Jiang Changbai took the initiative to go to the mountain peak. Halfway up the mountain, the two of them were intercepted. Jiang Changbai took out a bag of silver and successfully reached the top of the mountain. On the road not far from the foot of the mountain, Xue Qi and Jiang Peihuan on the road not far from the foot of the mountain, Xue Qi and Jiang Peihuan were sitting in the carriage playing chess. Jiang Peihuan had just placed her chess piece when she heard the sound of horse hooves. That was fast. Jiang Peihuan and Xue Qi looked at each other, and both of them saw the surprise in each other's eyes. Jiang Peihuan lifted the curtain and saw Xiao Nanye on Zui Yun's back. When Jiang Peihuan saw Xiao Nanye, the man also saw her. Their eyes met and the man rode to the carriage. Then, he lifted the curtain and entered the carriage. "Why are you here?" Seeing Xiao Nanye at her side, Jiang Peihuan blurted out without thinking. "I was worried about you, so I came to take a look." "King Cheng, you are underestimating me. I can protect Huan on my own." Xue Qi, who was sitting across from them, couldn't help but look at the man angrily when he heard what Xiao Nanye said. However, Xiao Nanye responded firmly, "My queen is better protected by me." Xue Qi fell silent. He regretted it. If he had known earlier, he would have gone up the mountain with them. "Master, thief arrived." At that moment, Han Feng's voice came from outside the carriage. Then, Jiang Peihuan heard the sound of horse hooves. "Those two brats didn't lie to us. There really is a juicy target." With the sound of horse hooves, a rough voice echoed in Jiang Peihuan's ears. Subsequently, the curtain of the carriage was abruptly lifted. Jiang Peihuan saw a group of masked men. In the dim light, the men outside couldn't discern the faces of the people in the carriage, but judging by the attire of Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nanye, they were sure that they were wealthy. The man who had spoken earlier shouted, "Everyone, get down here." Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 151, Recognizing Lin Xingchen hearing these words, Jiang Peihuan distinctly felt the temperature around Xiao Nanye drop instantly. Worried that the man might lose control and take action right away, Jiang Peihuan quickly grabbed his hand, then lowered her voice and said, "Xiao Nanye, hold back." To the others, it seemed like Jiang Peihuan was scared. As she spoke, her breath washed over Xiao Nanye's ear, and he could even distinctly smell her faint fragrance. The three of them didn't say anything but cooperatively dismounted from the carriage. As Jiang Peihuan had anticipated, the group led them up the mountain. However, the path they took was different from the one Jiang Peihuan had seen earlier. It was a much more concealed route. Jiang Peihuan quietly memorized the path and followed along. Xiao Nanye walked in front of Jiang Peihuan, and Xueqi followed behind her. By the time they reached halfway up the mountain, the bandits couldn't ride their horses anymore and had to proceed on foot. Perhaps because Jiang Peihuan and her companions were cooperative, the group didn't give them a hard time. After walking for 2 hours, they were led to an empty field. As soon as they arrived, Jiang Peihuan saw Jiang Changbai and Lin Xingchen, who were tied to chairs. Both of them had clearly been beaten up, with wounds visible on their faces. Seeing Jiang Peihuan approach, their eyes filled with resentment. However, when they saw Xiao Nanye, the resentment in their eyes turned into surprise. "What do you mean? One gave you money to kidnap them, why did you?" Before Jiang Changbai could finish, he was punched. The man standing next to him, witnessing his pain, scoffed, "Do you think we're fools? These people are obviously rich. And you two are obviously wealthy too, since all of you are wealthy here. We wouldn't let any of you go." Hearing this, Jiang Changbai was speechless, left without any rebuttal. Seeing this, Xueqi spoke up, "What do you want with us? If it's money you're after, we can give it to you. Just let us go." "Of course we want money. But we want people, too." As he spoke, a tall man suddenly walked towards Xiao Nanye. When everyone witnessed this scene, they were all stunned, Jiang Peihuan included, whose eyes widened in surprise. "Boss, this young man is fair and delicate, doesn't he meet your requirements?" The man referred to as boss was the one who approached Xiao Nanye. He carefully scrutinized Xiao Nanye's appearance, finding its face somewhat familiar, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. From Xiao Nanye's face down, the leader of the bandits carefully sized up Xiao Nanye's figure. Eventually, a lewd smile appeared in his eyes. "Good, one like this one." As he spoke, he reached out intending to touch Xiao Nanye's face. Xiao Nanye's expression changed instantly, his eyes filled with fury. Xueqi quietly moved aside. "If you dare touch me, I swear I'll cut you into pieces." Xiao Nanye dodged the man's hand and spoke with hostility in his eyes. Seeing Xiao Nanye's expression, the man shuddered involuntarily. However, when he looked up again, Xiao Nanye's expression had returned to normal. A man standing nearby saw this and became angry. "Hey, brat, do you think you're the king here? 111 teach you a lesson." As he said this, he moved to slap Xiao Nanye, but his hand was caught by the boss. "This one's mine. Don't you dare lay a hand on him. What if you damage him?" Xueqi, Jiang Changbai, and Lin Xingchen all showed a trace of amusement upon witnessing this scene. Worried that Xiao Nanye might see their smiles, they all lowered their heads, but their shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. Jiang Peihuan also suppressed a smile, but when she saw Xiao Nanye's livid face, she quickly composed herself. "All right, lock them in the woodshed for now. We'll sort out their belongings in the morning." "Yes." Moments later, they were all taken to a woodshed. It was said to be a woodshed, but it was actually an abandoned house. When the door was pushed open, Jiang Peihuan was stunned. There were many people in the room, men, women, even children. But these people all shared a common feature, their eyes filled with fear and numbness. When they saw Jiang Peihuan and the others being brought in, those people only looked up and did not say a word. They only looked at them with sympathy. "Why are there so many people here?" Seeing these people, Xueqi couldn't help but speak up. Hearing his words, Jiang Changbai said in a low voice, "Obviously, these people must have been locked up here by them. That's not helpful. Are you all from the Jingdo?" Ignoring the conversation by her side, Jiang Peihuan asked a girl sitting across from them. Compared to the others, This girl's eyes still held some hope. Perhaps it was because Jiang Peihuan spoke gently, or maybe out of sympathy. Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the girl said softly, "I'm the young miss of the Lin family. I was kidnapped while I was out playing." "The Lin family? Who is your father?" As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously glanced at Lin Xingchen. The little girl was quite young, looking about 10 years old. Fleeing Jiang Peihuan's words, she whispered, "My father is Lin Rupiang. I'm his youngest daughter. My name is Lin Menglan." Jiang Peihuan had no impression of the name Lin Rupiang. She subconsciously looked at Xiao Nanye. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's eyes, the man said softly, "The editor of the Hanlin Academy has no sense of existence in the Lin family." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan understood. It seemed he Lin Ruhai younger brother from another mother. At this moment, Jiang Peihuan noticed Lin Menglan was staring in Lin Xingchen's direction. Just as she was about to speak, she heard the little girls shout, "Brother Xingchen, it's you." Upon hearing the little girl's voice, Jiang Peihuan and the others all turned to look at Lin Xingchen. But upon hearing the little girl's call, Lin Xingchen, with a cold face, said, "You're mistaken." "I'm not mistaken." The little girl suddenly stood up and walked in front of Lin Xingchen. She opened her collar, taking a small pendant from around her neck. It was just a small marble, not worth any money, but because it was always worn close to her body, the marble was very smooth. Holding the marble from her necklace up in front of Lin Xingchen, Lin Menglan said with excitement in her eyes, "Brother Xingchen, have you forgotten Lan Lan? This is the marble you gave me before Wan Bin kidnapped. Look, I've been wearing it all along." Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 152, Lin Menglan of the Lin family. Upon seeing the marble on the little girl's neck, a hint of excitement flashed in Lin Xingchen's eyes. However, when he faced Lin Menglan, he pushed her away. "What marble? One have no idea what this is. You've got the wrong person." Even though Lin Xingchen's expression was very cold, Jiang Peihuan caught the flicker of excitement in his eyes. Glancing at the marble on Lin Menglan's neck, Jiang Peihuan recognized it as a toy beloved by children. From this, Jiang Peihuan guessed that Lin Menglan and Lin Xingchen must have had a good relationship when they were young. But Lin Menglan didn't know Lin Xingchen's thoughts. Hearing his emotionless words, the little girl's eyes were filled with sadness. Just as she was about to say something, the door was suddenly pushed open. All the people who had been captured earlier shrank back in fear. Two men walked in, one with a cold aura all over him, the other with a lecherous look. The man in the front swept his gaze over everyone, mainly focusing on the young girls. His eyes finally landed on Lin Menglan. Seeing her delicate face, a smile appeared in his eyes. "Big brother, this girl isn't bad. Why don't we take her tonight?" Upon hearing this, the man behind gave Lin Menglan a brief glance and then nodded. "All right, take her away." Upon hearing the man's words, the man who spoke earlier directly stepped forward and grabbed Lin Menglan's arm. Seeing these two men suddenly appear, Lin Menglan's eyes were full of terror, and she instinctively began to struggle. "Let go of me." Lin Menglan was just a little girl, and the two men were much bigger than her. No matter how much she struggled, she couldn't break free from the man's grasp. Those who had been brought in before seemed numb to the situation. Not only did they not step forward, they actually seemed relieved. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan frowned. In her panic, Lin Menglan bit the man's hand hard. The man yelped in pain and cursed, "You little brat, how dare you bite me? I'll kill you today." As he spoke, he slapped Lin Menglan's face. Blood immediately seeped from the corner of the little girl's mouth. Seeing this scene, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously wanted to make a move, but someone beat her to it. As the man raised his hand again, Lin Xingchen stepped forward, kicked the man down, and then scooped Lin Menglan into his arms. The little girl had just been slapped and her eyes were filled with terror. But now, held in Lin Xingchen's arms, she no longer looked afraid. Instead, a small smile appeared on her face as she looked at the young man beside her. The little girl showed a bright smile. "Brother Xingchen." Although Lin Xingchen didn't comfort her verbally, he didn't continue with his cold expression either. He placed her next to Jiang Peihuan and spoke softly, "Eldest miss, could you please help me take care of her?" Seeing Jiang Peihuan nod, Lin Xingchen turned to look at the two men. The man Lin Xingchen had knocked down had already gotten up, but he looked at Lin Xingchen with a grim expression. "Who are you to meddle in our affairs? I'm here to claim your lives." As his words fell, Lin Xingchen had already drawn his long sword. However, he did not expect the man's martial arts skills to be quite good. The previously quiet bandit, seeing the situation, quickly ran out, apparently to call for reinforcements. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan quickly turned to Jiang Changbai, "Elder brother, stop him." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, Jiang Changbai immediately stepped forward. The small room suddenly filled with the sound of fighting. Jiang Peihuan took Lin Menglan and moved back a bit. At this point, Lin Xingchen had already pierced the heart of the man who initiated the fight with his sword. Seeing the man on the ground and another man halted by Jiang Changbai, the latter's face hinted at unease. His eyes, filled with hostility, glared at the people in front of him. Coldly, he demanded, "Who are you? How dare you kill in my place?" Without a word, Jiang Changbai and Lin Xingchen glanced at each other and killed that man. Seeing the two bodies on the ground, the people who had been captured earlier looked relieved and surprised. Then, they all knelt before Jiang Peihuan and the others, begging, "Save us, please, save us. You guys, please get up first." Jiang Peihuan said, worrying that the noise here would attract others. However, the people paid no heed and continued their desperate pleas. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan coldly intervened, "If they discover what happened here, none of us will escape. If you want to leave this place, listen to me." Seeing the coldness in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, the people finally shut their mouths and slowly sat down on the ground. But still, someone couldn't help but ask, "Miss, no, you are not ordinary people. Can you save us?" "We will do our best." Jiang Peihuan wasn't sure what would happen next. She could only promise to try her best, but she couldn't guarantee anything. Some people were obviously dissatisfied with her response, but considering the two bodies on the ground, nobody dared to say anything. At this moment, Lin Xingchen came up to Jiang Peihuan, full of regret, and said softly, "I'm sorry, eldest miss, I've messed up your plan." Seeing the remorse in Lin Xingchen's eyes, Jiang Peihuan shook her head. Just as she was about to speak, a soft voice echoed from her side, "Sister, don't blame Brother Xingchen. He was only trying to save me." Lin Menglan's face was already swollen, but the little girl was still speaking softly on Lin Xingchen's behalf. Jiang Peihuan didn't particularly like the people of the Lin family, but she had no ill will towards the little girl in front of her. She looked at Lin Xingchen and said softly, "It's all right. Saving people is more important." If Lin Xingchen could have watched Lin Menglan being taken away by those two men without doing anything, Jiang Peihuan would have been terrified. Now, at least it showed that Lin Xingchen still had principles. "Elder brother, strip off the clothes of those two men." "Huan, what do you need these men's clothes for?" Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Changbai asked instinctively, but his hands were already working on it. Jiang Peihuan didn't answer Jiang Changbai's question. Instead, she took out a small medicine bottle from her bag and said softly to Lin Menglan, "You're hurt, let me apply the medicine for you." "Thank you, sister." Seeing the medicine bottle in Jiang Peihuan's hand, the little girl thanked her softly. But then, she looked at Lin Xingchen, "But I want Brother Xingchen to apply the medicine for me." Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan raised her eyebrows and, without waiting for Lin Xingchen to respond, she threw the medicine bottle to him. He caught it instinctively. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 153, Gathering Information. Witnessing this scene, Jiang Peihuan's eyes revealed a smile, and so did Lin Menglan's. Before Lin Xingchen could say anything, she ran up to him and said with a smile, "Brother Xingchen, can you help me apply the medicine?" The little girl smiled and pulled her wound, causing her to grimace in pain. Lin Xingchen had originally wanted to remain stern, but seeing the wound on the young girl's face, He opened the medicine bottle and poured out a bit of ointment on his fingertip. Gently, he applied it to the corner of the girl's mouth. Although the wound at the corner of her mouth still hurt, Lin Menglan's eyes were filled of smiles. Seeing the smile on her face, Lin Xingchen could no longer keep a cold face. He lowered his head to look at her and said in a low voice, "I'll think of a way to send you home, but you can't tell anyone that you saw me, understand? Brother Xingchen, aren't you coming home?" Hearing his words, she reflexively asked. But upon hearing the girl's words, the warmth in Lin Xingchen's eyes disappeared in an instant, replaced by sternness. He looked at Lin Menglan coldly and said softly, "That place is no longer my home." After saying this, Lin Xingchen walked away without looking at Lin Menglan again. The little girl still wanted to say something, but Jiang Peihuan held her hand. "Little girl, you are a smart child. You should know what to say and what not to say." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Lin Menglan looked at Lin Xingchen and finally nodded. "Brother Xingchen, don't worry, one won't tell anyone I've seen you. But, will I be able to see you again after I return home?" As she said the last sentence, her eyes were filled with tears. Seeing the look in her eyes, Lin Xingchen nodded. "We will meet again in the future." He would have to return sooner or later, once he reclaimed what was rightfully his. Upon hearing these words, Lin Menglan's eyes filled with smiles again. "Huan the clothes have been removed." At this point, Jiang Changbai had already stripped the two men of their clothes and dragged their bodies into the corner. Taking the clothes from Jiang Changbai's hands, Jiang Peihuan said softly, "One want to go out and gather some information, and check out the terrain here." As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan began to put on one of the clothes. Seeing this, Jiang Changbai said directly, "Then I'll go with you." As he spoke, he began to put on another set of clothes. Although these were clothes that had just been taken off from a dead person, whether it was Jiang Changbai or Jiang Peihuan, they were both people who had been to the battlefield, so they did not care about these at all. Just as Jiang Changbai was about to put on the clothes, they were snatched away. He looked up to see Xiao Nanya putting on the clothes. The corners of Jiang Changbai's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but look at Xiao Nanya and say, "Your Highness, I sent this inappropriate. With many people here, in case of any emergencies, you should stay here to protect them. As for Pei Huan, one will protect her." Anticipating what Jiang Changbai wanted to say, Xiao Nanya spoke first. At this time, Jiang Peihuan had already put on the clothes. She tied up her long hair. In the night, no one could easily recognize her identity. Xiao Nanya stood by her side. They exchanged a glance and left the woodshed together. Watching them leave, Jiang Changbai was filled with frustration. If it were anyone else, he could have beat them up, but he couldn't lay a hand on Xiao Nanya because of his status. Plus, even if he tried, he might not win. Watching this, Xue Qi burst out laughing. Hearing his laughter, Jiang Changbai looked at him angrily. "You're laughing. You didn't even try to stop him just now. You speak as if you can stop His Highness King Cheng." Upon hearing this, Jiang Changbai fell silent. "Xiao Nanya, let's go that way." After coming out of the woodshed, Jiang Peihuan pointed to the left. Since there were bright lights over there, she guessed that was the bandits' base camp. Xiao Nanya didn't say anything. Instead, he took her hand and pulled her behind him, to protect her in case of any sudden incident. "You stay behind me. Millimeter." Hearing the man's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded slightly, her eyes showing a touch of warmth. The two of them quietly approached the light source. When they reached the wall, Jiang Peihuan was about to climb up when she felt a force at her waist. Xiao Nanya held her by the waist and with a single leap, they were on the rooftop. After sitting down on the roof, Xiao Nanya removed a roof tile. Through the lamplight, Jiang Peihuan could see the situation inside the house. There were 3 people in the room, and the floor was filled with jewels and jewelry. Some of the things were prepared by Jiang Peihuan's people, and the rest were naturally stolen by these people. "Boss, we're rich this time." The man addressed as boss was the one who had come down the mountain earlier. Seated on a chair, a hint of a smile appeared in his eyes upon hearing these words. "With this money, we can live comfortably for quite a while." "Right, boss, when is Prince Qing's mansion settling the bill?" Upon hearing the words Prince Qing's mansion, Jiang Peihuan pricked up her ears. At the mention of this, the smile in the boss' eyes vanished without a trace, replaced by an unpleasant look. Don't mention it, our third brother hasn't returned yet. We might not get paid this time. Boss, we have lost so many brothers. Do you think the Qing mansion will dare to go back on their word? Are you stupid? That's Prince Qing, the son of the emperor. As civilians, we can't go against the officials. Besides, don't you know who we are? Upon hearing this, the man fell silent. While Jiang Peihuan was pondering the meaning of their conversation, she suddenly heard a soft noise. Turning her head, she saw a snow-white rat standing before her. Seeing Jiang Peihuan on the roof, the rat widened its eyes and charged towards her. Seeing this, Xiao Nanye, who was nearby, quickly embraced Jiang Peihuan. Xiao Nanye, be careful, don't let it bite you. This was a brocade rat, extremely poisonous. Jiang Peihuan quickly warned. Hearing her, Xiao Nanye immediately drew his long sword. The brocade rat was impaled by Xiao Nanye's sword. Looking at the dead brocade rat, Jiang Peihuan felt a touch of pity. The blood of the brocade rat was a precious ingredient for medicine. Who's there? A voice came from below. Then, all three men in the house jumped onto the rooftop. Seeing the brocade rat on the roof, the man called Boss had pure anguish in his eyes. How dare you kill my brocade rat? I'll kill you and bury you with it. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 154, Late Night Fight. As he spoke, the man pulled out his sword, aiming directly at Jiang Peihuan. Because Jiang Peihuan did not have a weapon in her hand. Xiao Nanye, witnessing this scene, had a cold look in his eyes. You're courting death. With a swift backhand sword grip, Xiao Nanye's eyes were filled with killing intent. Jiang Peihuan knew that this situation was turning bad, so she pulled out the long whip from her waist. However, Xiao Nanye was up against three alone, leaving no room for Jiang Peihuan to step in. So, she simply stood by and watched the fight. The sounds of fighting on the roof alarmed everyone in the Shan Mountain village. When she saw the bandits running out, Jiang Peihuan flew down and lashed out with the long whip in her hand. In an instant, the approaching crowd fell. Xiao Nanye, seeing that Jiang Peihuan could handle herself, didn't come down from the roof. Huan you're not fair, you started a fight without calling me. At this moment, Jiang Peihuan saw Xueqi coming towards her, with Lin Xingchen beside him. However, Jiang Changbai was nowhere to be found. Not seeing her elder brother, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but ask Xueqi, Cousin Qi, where is my elder brother? I asked him to stay there and protect those people. Both Xueqi and Lin Xingchen were rare expert. With their help, Jiang Peihuan felt she was hardly needed. Looking at Xiao Nanye on the roof, she turned to the two and said, I'm going to help Xiao Nanye, 111 leave here to you. With that, Jiang Peihuan flew away. When she reached the roof, she saw the gang leader running towards the back mountain. Seeing this, she immediately pursued. Huan be careful. People behind her shouted when they saw Jiang Peihuan's actions. Jiang Peihuan didn't respond, but pursued the man in front of her with all her strength. Her lightness skills were not weak, as she had been taught by Jiang Hong himself. However, the man's lightness skill was faster than hers. By the time she reached the back mountain, Jiang Peihuan suddenly realized the man had disappeared. Looking at the quiet back mountain, Jiang Peihuan frowned, but she gripped her long whip tightly, not daring to relax for a moment. There was a slight sound in her ear. Without thinking, she flipped her wrist and the long whip in Jiang Peihuan's hand lashed out. With a scream, the man fell to the ground. He touched his face and felt the moisture in his palm. His eyes were filled with fury. I'm going to kill you. As he spoke, he charged at Jiang Peihuan. Jiang Peihuan didn't say a word, focusing on her opponent. The man was a skilled fighter, but Jiang Peihuan's skills were honed on the battlefield, so she was more than capable of handling him. But in the midst of the fight, the man suddenly threw a poisonous scorpion. If Jiang Peihuan had not reacted quickly, the poisonous scorpion would have landed directly on her face. But in her moment of distraction, the man's sword was thrust directly towards Jiang Peihuan's heart. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to dodge, the man's sword suddenly stopped. Looking up, Jiang Peihuan saw that a sword had pierced the man's shoulder. Then, with a flick of Xiao Nanyes's sword, the man's wrist was cut off. In an instant, the entire back mountain echoed with screams. When Xiao Nanye was about to pick up his long sword again, Jiang Peihuan quickly said, "Xiao Nanye, don't kill him yet." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nanye changed the direction of his sword, but still managed to stab the man in the arm. The man, seriously wounded, did not make a sound after his initial screams of agony. Jiang Peihuan walked up to the man and said coldly, "I'll ask you a few questions. You'd better answer honestly." Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, the man sneered. His eyes were full of mockery. Xiao Nanye, who was at the side, saw this and flicked his sword, and one of the man's fingers was instantly severed. The man grunted, but he did not dare to speak again. There was a hint of fear in his eyes. Xiao Nanye glanced at him and spoke directly, "You better start talking, or I won't mind cutting off your fingers one by one." You're the King Cheng?" Hearing Xiao Nanye being addressed this way, the man spoke, his eyes filled with terror. But Xiao Nanye didn't respond to him. Jiang Peihuan looked down at the man on the ground and said coldly, "Tell me, who ordered you to kidnap the old Madame Jing of the general's mansion? What were you planning to do with her?" Hearing Jiang Peihuan's voice, the man widened his eyes, then after a few seconds of silence, he spoke in a low voice, "I can't tell." Before he could finish his sentence, a surge of pain came from his hand, as Xiao Nanye had cut off another of his fingers. Looking at the man lying on the ground, Xiao Nanye's eyes were full of gloom. "My patience is limited." It was Prince Qing. Jiang Peihuan already knew about it. Upon hearing the man's words, she continued, "What did Prince Qing tell you to do next?" Glancing at Jiang Peihuan's face, the man said in a low voice, "Kill her." As soon as the man's words fell, Jiang Peihuan's long whip wrapped around his neck. With a slight jerk of her wrist, the man's breath was cut off. After killing him, Jiang Peihuan realized that Xiao Nanye was standing next to her. She subconsciously looked up at him, but saw that his expression was calm. At this, Jiang Peihuan sighed in relief. Meeting Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Xiao Nanye spoke softly, "Huan next time if there's a need to kill, you don't have to do it yourself. Just tell me, and 111 do it for you." "Huan." Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, she saw Xueqi and Lin Xingchen coming towards them, along with Jiang Changbai. Seeing the man on the ground, Jiang Changbai's eyes were filled with coldness, so it was these people who wanted to kidnap grandmother. They were acting on the orders of Prince Qing. Prince Qing. Upon hearing Jiang Changbai's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded and then repeated what the bandits had said. After learning about Xiao Junhao's plan from Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Changbai's eyes filled with anger. "Our general's mansion has no grudge with Prince Qing. Why would he do this? This is not the first time." These words were spoken by Lin Xingchen, who recounted his initial ambush of Jiang Peihuan on the road while meeting Jiang Changbai's gaze. Upon hearing this, Jiang Changbai's already grim expression darkened even further. Looking at the corpse on the ground, Jiang Changbai immediately said, "Huan we have to tell father and mother about this. We will then appeal to the emperor for a judgment. Brother, do you believe that the emperor would indeed punish Prince Qing on our behalf?" Upon hearing this, a look of conflict appeared in Jiang Changbai's eyes. Before he could say anything, Jiang Peihuan continued, "In any case, Prince Qing is still a prince. Besides, neither grandmother nor one have suffered any substantial harm. So even if this matter reaches the emperor, he won't really do anything to Prince Qing." Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 155, Eliminating the Bandits. As long as Prince Qing staunchly denies it, this matter will eventually come to nothing. So, are we just going to let this matter rest? Of course, we can't let it rest. Hearing Jiang Changbai's words, Jiang Peihuan chuckled softly and then said with a smile. While she spoke, although she had a smile on her face, there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. There was only a scheming and gloomy look in them. Everyone observing this scene suddenly felt a touch of sympathy for Xiao Juanhao. Turning to the man beside her, Jiang Peihuan spoke softly, "If my guess is correct, the palace should be almost done being refurbished, right?" Xiao Nanya was not surprised by Jiang Peihuan's conclusion. Hearing her words, he nodded in agreement. Xiao Juanhao has already prepared the funds, so the completion is only a matter of time. In no more than 3 to 5 days, the palace should be completely refurbished. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan nodded, then continued, "I suspect that with Xiao Junhao's character, after the palace refurbishment is completed, he will definitely invite the emperor to see his accomplishments." Millimeter. Seeing Xiao Nanya nod, and then observing the puzzled expressions on Jiang Changbai and the others, Jiang Peihuan continued with a smile, "What if the refurbished palace collapses in front of the emperor? What do you think will happen?" Hearing this, everyone's faces revealed surprise. Xue Qi was the first to speak. "Even if Prince Qing is a royal prince, the emperor will probably blame him, won't he? Huan one suppose what you want is not merely for Xiao Juanhao to be punished." As everyone was discussing, Xiao Nanya suddenly looked at Jiang Peihuan and spoke. Meeting the man's gaze, Jiang Peihuan laughed and said, "One heard that you have a good relationship with the Imperial Astronomical Bureau." Upon hearing this, Han Feng, who was hurriedly catching up, couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Who in the entire Qi kingdom doesn't know that his master detests the so-called theory of fate the most? Those in the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, who have been ridiculed by King Cheng, despise seeing Xiao Nanya and would rather take a detour. However, upon hearing this, Xiao Nanya nodded and said with a smile, "Yes, I have a good relationship with the Imperial Astronomical Bureau." Jiang Peihuan had naturally heard about the relationship between Xiao Nanya and the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, which is why she deliberately mentioned it. Now, seeing the man seriously nodding his head, she was left stunned. While Jiang Peihuan was stunned, Xiao Nanya continued, "Do you want the palace collapse incident to be associated with Xiao Juanhao? Not only to be associated with him, but one also want his fate to conflict with the emperor's. Since ancient times, emperors have placed great belief in the theory of fate. If the emperor knew that Xiao Junhao's fate conflicted with his own, he would harbor reservations, even if Xiao Juanhao was his biological son." "Okay, I will arrange this matter." Looking at Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanya spoke softly. It was already late at night. Han Feng looked at Xiao Nanya and asked, "Master, what are we going to do with the bandits on this mountain?" "Kill them." As soon as Han Feng's words fell, Xiao Nanya spoke directly. When Xue Qi and Jiang Changbai heard this, they couldn't help but say, "Your Highness King Cheng, these bandits are good at martial arts. If we recruit them into the army, then, would recruiting them into the army do justice to those they killed?" Before the two could finish speaking, Xiao Nanya interrupted them. Hearing this, both of them were stunned and eventually shut their mouths. Lin Xingchen, who was standing nearby, was even more surprised by this scene. He suddenly felt extremely fortunate. He was glad that he hadn't actually done anything to Jiang Peihuan back then, or else he might not be standing here today. It was as if Jiang Peihuan had guessed Lin Xingchen's thoughts. She turned to him and said, "General Lin, don't worry. You're different. Although you and your servants were once bandits, you have a moral code. You've never truly done anything to harm people." An hour later, Jiang Peihuan and Xiao Nanya went down the mountain together. The people who had been kidnapped to the mountain had already been sent away by the soldiers. The official statement was that King Cheng had led the soldiers to wipe out the bandits. This matter had nothing to do with Jiang Peihuan. When they returned to the general's mansion, it was already late at night, and Xiao Nanya didn't say much. Looking at Jian Peihuan on Lai Feng's back, he said softly, "It's getting late. You should go back and rest. I will arrange that matter as soon as possible." Jiang Peihuan nodded, then followed Jiang Changbai into the general's mansion. As it was already late at night, Jiang Peihuan didn't wish to disturb anyone and headed directly back to the plum garden. The next morning, Jiang Peihuan got up early. She hadn't seen Jiang Hong and Shui Yang since she returned 2 days ago. Worried that she would not be able to see the two of them if she woke up late, Jiang Peihuan went to Yanglin early. When she arrived, Jiang Hong and Shui Yang were preparing for breakfast. Both of them were wearing their armor. Seeing Jiang Peihuan appear, a loving smile appeared on the couple's faces. Huan come quickly. Shui Yang even personally set the bowls and chopsticks for Jiang Peihuan. After paying respect to the two, Jiang Peihuan sat down on the chair. Just as Jiang Peihuan was about to speak, she heard her mother's voice. Huan how is your maternal grandmother's health? Mother, rest assured. Grandmother's health has already improved. Jiang Peihuan didn't inform her mother about Wang Fengji's poisoning. Shui Yang is the youngest daughter of old Madame Shui. She has an extremely close relationship with old Madame Shui. If she were to discover Wang Fengji's act of poisoning, Jiang Peihuan wasn't sure how her mother would react. Thinking about old Madame Shui's arrangements, Jiang Peihuan chose to hide the matter. I asked Yi Xiao to give the prescription for grandmother's recuperation to second aunt. I think grandmother's body has already recovered. That's good. Knowing that old Madame Shui's was fine, Shui Yang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Jiang Hong and Shui Yang were husband and wife, so he naturally knew his wife's worries over the past few days. Hearing the conversation between the mother and daughter, he whispered, Yang now you can be relieved. Shui Yang nodded. By the way, Huan I heard that you and your older brother went to the outskirts last night. Yes. Father, I was about to discuss this matter with you. Putting down the utensils in her hands, Jiang Peihuan told Jiang Hong about everything that happened last night, including Xiao Junhao's scheming and plots. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, both Jiang Hong and Shui Yang's eyes were filled with anger. Especially Jiang Hong, his chopsticks snapped in his hand. As a prince, he is so ruthless. Father, speaking of it, grandmother was also implicated by me. Seeing the guilt in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, Jiang Hong quickly spoke up. Don't say that. What does this matter have to do with you? Father, even though Prince Qing is a royal prince, I can't swallow this grievance. So, I've asked King Cheng for some assistance in this matter. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 156, Going to King Cheng Mansion. Meeting Jiang Hong's gaze, Jiang Peihuan briefly explained the arrangements she had made. Upon hearing these arrangements, Jiang Hong appeared very satisfied. On the other hand, Shui Yang, who had overheard the conversation, couldn't help but express her concern. Huan based on what you said, Prince Qing is extremely narrow-minded. If he finds out that you are the one orchestrating this, he will not let you off lightly. Mother, even if we do nothing, he will not let us go. Even though father has already handed over the military token, as long as our Jiang family remains in Jingdo, we cannot keep ourselves uninvolved. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Shui Yang fell silent. After a moment, she laughed. I really have grown old. Now, one can't see things as clearly as you, a young girl in her teens. Madam, Deputy General Liu has returned. At this moment, Yang Lin's maid walked in with a smile. Hearing this, a smile also appeared in Jiang Peihuan's eyes. Mother, if you're not busy today, why not check out the things that grandmother prepared for you? And cousin Qi, he hasn't seen you yet. Yang you don't need to go to the military camp today. Before Shui Yang could respond, Jiang Hong had already spoken. Hearing this, Shui Yang nodded. Then, Jiang Peihuan and her parents went to the main hall. At this time, Shui Qi also arrived in the main hall. Seeing Jiang Hong and Shui Yang, he hurried forward to greet them. Nephew greets aunt and uncle. Seeing the young man bowing to her, Shui Yang's eyes instantly turned red. Stepping forward, she helped Shui Qi up and carefully studied his features. When I left Qingju, you were still held in your father's arms. In the blink of an eye, Qi, you've grown so much. No matter how old one gets, in my eyes, aunt is always beautiful. You're just as sweet-talking as you were when you were a child. Shuiyang's sadness was washed away by Shuiqi's words. Mother, quickly go and take a look at the things that grandmother has prepared for you. There are many things that you like to eat. All right, I'll go take a look. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Shuiyang walked out of the main hall. All the boxes had been carried in, filling up the large yard. Most of them were food, but they were all food that Shuiyang liked to eat. Shuiyang's eyes were filled with tears when she saw these things. Huan send over the things your grandmother prepared for your two aunts. Yes, mother. By the way, seeing Jiang Peihuan's puzzled expression, Shuiyang continued, these food from Qingju has a unique flavor, prepare some and send it to King Cheng's mansion. Hearing Shuiyang's words, a hint of doubt flashed through Jiang Peihuan's eyes, but she still nodded. 2 hours later, Jiang Peihuan, Yi Xiao, and Yue boarded a carriage. King Cheng Mansion was located in the center of Jingdou, occupying a few hundred acres of land. King Cheng Mansion. Xiao Nanye was practicing his sword skills. Upon seeing Han Feng rushing towards him, the long sword in his hand pointed directly at Han Feng's heart. Startled, Han Feng quickly shouted, Master, the eldest miss is here. What did you say? The man's long sword flicked, aiming straight at a fallen leaf. He then threw the sword, which embedded itself into a tree trunk. Just as Han Feng was about to speak again, the man's figure had already darted towards the mansion entrance. This was Jiang Peihuan's first visit to the King Cheng's mansion. She had never been here in her past life, and in this life, it was also her first time. Surveying the mansion, Jiang Peihuan's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. Other mansions were extravagant, but Xiao Nanye's was not only luxurious but also carried an imposing aura. At the entrance stood 2 soldiers. At first glance, one could tell they were battle-hardened, their demeanor stern. Huan. While she was looking around, she saw a figure dressed in white walk out from the main gate. Xiao Nanye's forehead was still covered in sweat, wearing his practice outfit. As he stood in front of everyone, Jiang Peihuan stepped forward and bowed, Greetings, Your Highness King Cheng. Before she could kneel down, he quickly grasped her hand, You don't need to bow to anyone in my mansion. As he spoke, Xiao Nanye already led Jiang Peihuan by the hand into the mansion. Upon entering, the first thing she saw were 2 rows of soldiers. As she was about to inquire, she heard all the soldiers simultaneously shout, Greetings, Queen. The sound startled her, and she instinctively turned to the man next to her. Seeing him smiling, he softly laughed, After all, you will be my queen in 2 months. It's not wrong to call you that now. Unnoticed, all the soldiers' eyes fell on Jiang Peihuan. She noticed their curious stares, which bore no offense, so she did not say anything. Having spent time in the military, she felt quite at ease with these soldiers. She thought for a moment and looked at Yue. Give each soldier a share of the food I brought. Yes, eldest miss. Huan, you brought food? Yes. Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Jiang Peihuan nodded softly, then said, My maternal grandmother sent over a lot of food from Qingju. My mother asked me to bring some to you. You should try it. At this time, the 2 of them had already walked to a pavilion, and Yi Xiao was bringing up some snacks. Thank my mother-in-law for me. As he spoke, he picked up a piece of snack. He carefully finished all the snacks in his hand before looking at Jiang Peihuan. This snack tastes good, one really like it. I'm glad you like it. As she spoke, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously surveyed the environment around her. Ultimately, she could only describe it with 2 words, cold. Indeed, the entire Cheng's mansion was cold. Throughout their walk, she hadn't seen a single maid or nanny. Noticing Jiang Peihuan looking around, Xiao Nanye said, Since you rarely visit, let me show you around. Okay. Seeing Jiang Peihuan nodding, Xiao Nanye directly took her hand. Jiang Peihuan struggled slightly but failed to break free, so she went along with him. A hint of a smile appeared in his eyes as he led her to the backyard. Look, this is the horse stable. Following the direction he was pointing, Jiang Peihuan immediately saw a few Fergana horses. There were still people riding horses in the stable, all of whom were soldiers. After walking a bit further, Xiao Nanye spoke softly, This is the archery range. As he spoke, Jiang Peihuan heard a cheer, someone had just hit the bullseye. Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 157, Jiang Peihuan's exceptional archery skills. Looking in the direction where the arrow hit the target, Jiang Peihuan realized that the person who shot the bullseye was none other than Lin Xingchen. Lin Xingchen was originally from a family of generals, so Jiang Peihuan was not surprised at his archery skills. However, what did surprise her was that the targets were moving and he still managed to hit the bullseye, which took more than just good archery skills. Greetings, Your Highness. At this moment, everyone saw Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan. Someone called out upon seeing Xiao Nanye, Your Highness, you've arrived at the perfect time, how about you show us your archery skills? At that moment, a bow and arrow were passed to Xiao Nanye. Xiao Nanye initially didn't want to participate, but seeing the curiosity in Jiang Peihuan's eyes, he agreed and extended his hand to her. Huan, would you like to give it a try? Jiang Peihuan loved these places, but seeing the soldiers, she turned to Xiao Nanye. Isn't this your training ground? Would it be appropriate for me to participate? You are my future princess, and the future queen of Cheng's mansion. There's nothing inappropriate about it. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nanye replied immediately. The man's voice was not low, and everyone at the training ground could hear him. Upon hearing this, a light chatter broke out among the crowd. Your Royal Highness, we've heard that the general is an exceptional warrior. Being the daughter of a military family, we believe your archery skills are equally impressive. Why don't you give us a demonstration? The men at the training ground were all Xiao Nanye's soldiers, straightforward and honest. Although their tone was somewhat provocative, but Jiang Peihuan knew they meant no harm. Upon seeing this, she nodded, but Jiang Peihuan did not take Xiao Nanye's outstretched hand. Instead, she leapt into the air and landed directly on the stage. Everyone watching this scene showed a hint of surprise in their eyes. Standing next to Xiao Nanye, Jiang Peihuan whispered, I've never shot at moving targets before. Would Your Highness please demonstrate first? Hearing this, Xiao Nanye didn't say much. Instead, he drew several arrows from the quiver. Jiang Peihuan noticed that he shot 3 arrows at once, each one hitting the bullseye. Excellent! The crowd erupted in cheers. Xiao Nanye paid no mind to the others. Instead, he looked at Jiang Peihuan, who was showing approval in her eyes. A slight smile appeared on his face as he handed the bow and arrow to her. Here, give it a try. Accepting the bow and arrow, Jiang Peihuan first tested the tension of the bow before drawing an arrow from the quiver. With the string fully drawn, an arrow shot from her hand at high speed, splitting Xiao Nanye's previous arrow lodged in the bullseye in two. The crowd went silent at this sight, their expressions shifting from surprise to sheer shock. Except for Xiao Nanye, who seemed to expect this outcome. Jiang Peihuan turned around, drew several more arrows from the quiver, and, just like Xiao Nanye before her, she shot 3 arrows simultaneously. Each arrow hit the bullseye. Incredible, Your Royal Highness, your archery skills are extraordinary. How did you learn to do this? In the army, power and strength were respected above all else. If previously the soldiers were courteous to Jiang Peihuan because of Xiao Nanye, now they showed her warmth and respect entirely because of her own demonstrated abilities. Hearing their words, Jiang Peihuan chuckled lightly and said, There's nothing to fuss about, practice makes perfect. Jiang Peihuan recalled that when she had barely learned to walk, Jiang Hong was already coaching her in archery. At that time, Jiang Peihuan was not even as tall as the bow. The soldier who heard her words was about to say something, but was interrupted by Xiao Nanye. He grabbed Jiang Peihuan's hand and turned to Lin Xingchen, You continue to train them. Yes, Your Highness. Jiang Peihuan nodded at everyone and then left with Xiao Nanye. Xiao Nanye took Jiang Peihuan around the majority of the mansion. They didn't finish the tour as the mansion was simply too big to cover in one day. Throughout the tour, Jiang Peihuan did not see a single woman. Jiang Peihuan initially planned to leave after delivering the snacks, but by the time she actually left the Cheng's mansion, it was already evening. Xiao Nanye escorted her to the door. By this time, The butler of the mansion had prepared many gifts to be loaded onto her carriage. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan looked at Xiao Nanya with confused eyes. Noticing her confused expression, Xiao Nanya softly said, "The great general's wife specially asked you to deliver food to me, so it's only right that I return the favor." Jiang Peihuan instinctively wanted to refuse, but knowing his character, she simply nodded, "All right. I should get going then." Emitem. Seeing him nod, Jiang Peihuan got into the carriage. Xiao Nanya stood at the entrance, watching Jiang Peihuan's carriage depart until it disappeared around a corner. Only then did he divert his gaze. At this moment, Han Feng approached Xiao Nanya and reported, "Master, the palace has been fully refurbished. In that case, Xiao Juanhao should be inviting the imperial brother to visit within the next few days, right?" Under normal circumstances, yes. Both Xiao Nanya and Jiang Peihuan assumed Xiao Juanhao would wait at least 2 days before inviting Emperor Qiming to tour the newly refurbished palace. However, the very next day, Jiang Peihuan found herself in a carriage heading to the palace with Jiang Hong and Shui Yang. Apart from old Madame Jiang and those not present in the mansion, almost everyone from the Jiang family had come. At this time, Jiang Peihuan shared the same carriage with Jiang Ruyun. Looking at Jiang Peihuan, Jiang Ruyun whispered, "Big sister, why did the emperor suddenly invite all the ministers and their families to the palace? If I'm not mistaken, it's likely because the palace renovations are complete, and the emperor wants all the ministers to visit together." As it turned out, Jiang Peihuan's assumption was correct. When the carriage stopped at the palace entrance, Jiang Peihuan saw a long line of carriages, with the Lin family's carriage right in front of hers. Seeing this long line, Jiang Peihuan frowned, thinking it would have been better to arrive later. Just then, a young eunuch quickly walked towards them, attracting everyone's attention. The young eunuch stopped in front of the general mansion's carriage. After bowing to Jiang Hong, the young eunuch said softly, "Great General, 1 a.m. acting on orders of His Highness King Cheng. 1 a.m. here to escort you, madam, and the young ladies into the palace." Upon hearing the young eunuch's words, Jiang Hong instinctively looked at Jiang Peihuan's carriage before smiling and saying, "Thank you for your kindness, please lead the way." Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 158, Entering the palace. As he spoke, Jiang Hong glanced at Deputy General Liu. The latter took a step forward and stuffed a small pouch into the hands of the young eunuch. The pouch was very light and did not weigh much. The young eunuch touched it and knew that it was silver notes. The smile on his face deepened. The carriage from the general's mansion drove directly into the royal palace, bypassing the queue of other family carriages waiting for inspection. On witnessing this scene, many onlookers showed a hint of dissatisfaction. However, considering the notable merits of the Jiang family, no one dared to say anything. Still, there were murmurs of complaint. We're all lining up, but the Jiang family gets special treatment. The one who made this remark was none other than Yang Xin. At that moment, Yang Xin was seated in Lin Mengyao's carriage. Following Yang Xin's gaze as she lifted the curtain, Lin Mengyao also spotted Jiang Peihuan's carriage. Seeing that Jiang Peihuan's carriage advanced directly ahead, without the need to queue or undergo inspection, Lin Mengyao's eyes were filled with complex emotions. Just then, the curtain of Jiang Peihuan's carriage was abruptly lifted. It wasn't Jiang Peihuan, but Jiang Ruyun who had raised the curtain. Jiang Ruyun had heard Yang Xin's voice and, looking at Yang Xin seated next to Lin Mengyao, she said with a smug look, "There's nothing to be done. King Cheng is considerate of my elder sister and can't bear to see her waiting in line. If you don't want to wait in line, you could also go and plead with Prince Qing." Upon hearing Jiang Ruyun's words, Yang Xin's eyes filled with anger, but she was unable to rebut. Seeing the triumph in Jiang Ruyun's eyes, Yang Xin suddenly sported a faint smile. She didn't dare to offend Jiang Peihuan, but she wasn't afraid of Jiang Ruyun. "Jiang Ruyun, if one were you, I wouldn't dare to step outside now. A disgraced woman like you still dares to." Yang Xin's words were cut off by a sudden intense pain in her hand that held the curtain. With the sudden pain, she instinctively released her grip, and the curtain was promptly lowered. Across from her, Jiang Peihuan elegantly retracted her whip, then turned to Jiang Ruyun and said, "There's no need to talk with these people." "Yes, elder sister." Upon hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Jiang Ruyun let go of the curtain. Meanwhile, Yang Xin in the carriage across was looking at the red mark on her back, her eyes full of gloom. Beside her, Lin Mengyaro, having witnessed this scene, had an equally unpleasant expression on her face. As Jiang Peihuan's carriage was about to disappear into the distance, Yang Xin couldn't help but turn to Lin Mengyaro and SSL, "Yarrow, Prince Qing is also presented today. Why hasn't he sent someone to escort you in first?" Lin Mengyao's expression turned even uglier when she heard Yang Xin's words. However, she softly replied, "Today, His Highness specially invited the Emperor to visit the palace. It's important for him, let's not trouble him with these trivial matters." Yang Xin wanted to say something else, but seeing the frosty expression on Lin Mengyao's face, she shut her mouth. By now, Jiang Peihuan had already made her way into the palace. As she descended from the carriage, she noticed Xiao Nanye standing there. The man was dressed in black, accompanied by Han Feng. "Master, eldest miss is here." Xiao Nanye, previously enveloped in coldness, instantly softened upon hearing these words. Stepping forward, Xiao Nanye acknowledged Jiang Hong and Shui Yang with a nod. "Great General, First Madam. Greetings, Your Highness." No need for such formalities. Upon seeing Jiang Hong and Shui Yang bowing to him, Xiao Nanye quickly intervened. Once he stood upright, Jiang Hong turned to Xiao Nanye and said, "Your Highness, we are grateful that you sent someone to usher us in early today. No need to thank me, Great General. It's a minor matter." Although he was speaking to Jiang Hong, Xiao Nanye's gaze was fixed on Jiang Peihuan the entire time. Shui Yang noticed this and gave a slight smile. "Your Highness, did you come to see Huan? The palace grounds are quite scenic. One thought to give Huan a little tour." Upon hearing Shui Yang's words, Xiao Nanye immediately responded. Shui Yang, with her forthright personality, chuckled at Xiao Nanye's words and said, "Then, Your Highness, please go ahead and show Huan around." "Thank you, First Madam." Upon hearing this, Xiao Nanye looked pleased. After a moment's thought, he gave Shui Yang a sincere bow. "First Madam, one appreciate the food that you asked Huan to deliver to me. I am deeply grateful for your kindness." Seeing Xiao Nanye bowing to her, Shui Yang quickly reached out to stop him. "Your Highness, there's no need." She thought for a moment and then said softly, "We're all family now. The food is nothing." "Understood." Hearing this, Xiao Nanye didn't say anything else, but his attitude towards Shui Yang became much gentler. Jiang Peihuan, who was standing at the side, watched the scene with a strange feeling in her eyes. "Greetings, Your Highness." Jiang Ruyun saw Xiao Nanye and bowed respectfully. Xiao Nanye nodded and didn't say anything. Everyone from the Jiang family slowly walked away, leaving only Xiao Nanye and Jiang Peihuan. Looking at the back of the Jiang family, Xiao Nanye looked at Jiang Peihuan and asked, "Why didn't Third Miss come today?" "Si Jin is still in the military camp." Hearing this, Xiao Nanye nodded. He wanted to hold Jiang Peihuan's hand, but seeing the many people nearby, he restrained himself. His gaze towards her, however, was full of tenderness. "Let's go, I'll show you around. After all, you might not get a full view later." When he said the last sentence, the man's voice was very low, but Jiang Peihuan still heard it clearly. She subconsciously looked at the man beside her, only to see Xiao Nanye nodding. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan didn't say anything but followed Xiao Nanye. In her previous life, Jiang Peihuan had also visited this palace once, accompanied by Xiao Juanhao. She remembered that when she came to this palace, her heart was full of excitement, and her eyes were filled with thrill. But now, the scenery remained the same, the person beside her was different, and so was her state of mind. It's only June, and there are lotus seeds already. As they arrived near a scenic river, Jiang Peihuan looked at the swaying lotus in the middle of the river with a bit of surprise. Hearing Jiang Peihuan's words, Xiao Nanye also looked at the lotus seeds in the river. He chuckled, then suddenly leapt up. Jiang Peihuan looked up to see him flying over the river surface, bending down to pluck 2 lotus seeds, and then flying back to her side. Handing the lotus seed pods to Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Nanye said softly, "I remember you like eating lotus seeds." Jiang Peihuan did indeed like eating lotus seeds, especially fresh ones, but considering that everything in the palace belonged to the emperor, she couldn't help but speak out, "I senti it inappropriate to directly pluck this lotus pod?" Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. Chapter 159, The Dragon's Head Breaks. Don't worry, my imperial brother won't mind. Upon seeing Jiang Peihuan's expression, Xiao Nanye understood her thoughts. As he peeled a lotus pod, he spoke. Hearing this, Jiang Peihuan subconsciously wanted to respond, but just as she prepared to speak, a hearty voice sounded near her ear. "You brat, how do you know that one won't mind?" Upon hearing this voice, Jiang Peihuan instinctively turned her head. A flash of bright yellow entered her vision. Jiang Peihuan recognized that it was Emperor Qi Ming. She quickly knelt and bowed. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Long live Your Majesty." "Greetings, my imperial brother." Seeing Emperor Qi Ming, Xiao Nanye calmly paid his respects. Without waiting for Emperor Qi Ming to respond, he helped Jiang Peihuan to her feet. "Imperial brother, if you scare one will empty your private treasury later. You brat, you still dare to threaten me?" Hearing Xiao Nanye's words, Emperor Qi Ming snorted coldly, but there was no trace of anger in his eyes. Emperor Qi Ming directly sat down on a stone bench to the side. Then, he turned to Jiang Peihuan, who was standing nearby. After giving her a casual glance, he spoke in a low voice, "You are Jiang Hong's eldest daughter?" "Yes, Your Majesty, your servant girl is Jiang Peihuan." Jiang Peihuan did not meet Emperor Qi Ming's gaze directly, yet she did not avoid it either. Seeing this, Emperor Qi Ming's eyes showed a hint of admiration. "You do bear some resemblance to your father's temperament. Do you like lotus seeds?" Seeing the lotus pod in Jiang Peihuan's hand, Emperor Qi Ming continued to ask. Jiang Peihuan nodded, then spoke softly, "When I was young, one liked to stay at my maternal grandmother's house. Qingju is known for its lotus seeds, which are very sweet, so I've liked them since I was a child. However, the soil and water in Jingdo are not suitable for growing lotus seeds, so the yield is quite low. When I saw this lotus pod just now, I was quite pleased. If you like them, I will gift you all the lotus pods in the river. Later, I will have them delivered to the general's mansion." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Jiang Peihuan hurriedly knelt down and bowed. "Get up." Once Jiang Peihuan stood up, Xiao Nanye handed her the peeled lotus seeds. In front of Emperor Qi Ming, Jiang Peihuan didn't reach out to accept them, but warned him with a glance. However, Xiao Nanye appeared oblivious and directly took her hand, placing the snow-white lotus seeds in her palm. Seeing this, Emperor Qi Ming showed a touch of dissatisfaction in his gaze towards Xiao Nanye. "What's this? You only have eyes for your future queen, and fail to notice your own imperial brother. Wang Kuan, didn't you hear that my imperial brother wants lotus seeds? Get to preparing them immediately." Hearing Emperor Qi Ming's words, Xiao Nanye responded without even lifting his head. When Wang Kuan, who was standing beside Emperor Qi Ming, heard this, he only smiled and did not say anything. However, Emperor Qi Ming gave Xiao Nanye a stern look. Just as he was about to speak, he heard, "Your son pays his respects to Your Majesty, my imperial father, and greets my imperial uncle." When Jiang Peihuan heard the voice, she also turned around and bowed. It was Xiao Juanhao, along with the other princes Xiao Junmo and Xiao Junior. At first glance, Xiao Juanhao saw Jiang Peihuan. Upon seeing her, his eyes revealed a complicated emotion. Although he quickly returned to his usual demeanor, Jiang Peihuan clearly noticed the fleeting shadow in his eyes. Shifting his gaze from Jiang Peihuan, Xiao Juanhao turned to Emperor Qi Ming and said, "Imperial father, this palace has been refurbished. How about I accompany you on a tour, and you can check if there are any deficiencies?" "Good." The primary reason for Emperor Qiming's visit today was to inspect the refurbishment of the palace. Hearing Xiao Junhao's words, he nodded in agreement. However, just as he was about to proceed, the emperor suddenly halted and turned towards Xiao Nanye. Nanye, you come along too. Oh, bring your future queen as well. Understood. Hearing Emperor Qiming's words, Xiao Nanye casually responded. Other than Xiao Junmo, the other princes had complicated expressions in their eyes when they saw this scene. There was admiration, as well as jealousy. Jiang Peihuan had always known that Emperor Qiming doted on Xiao Nanye, but she didn't know that he would be so fond of him. As the group moved forward, Jiang Peihuan was walking at the back, and Xiao Nanye was also standing behind her. Xiao Nanye kept passing lotus seeds to Jiang Peihuan as they walked forward. Seeing this, Prince An, standing beside them, couldn't help but tug at Xiao Nanye's sleeve. Uncle, can you also give me some? No, if you want to eat it, go pick it yourself. Hearing Prince An's words, Xiao Nanye didn't even raise his head and said directly. Xiao Junmo watched as Xiao Nanye passed lotus seeds to Jiang Peihuan again, his eyes filled with a hint of sadness. At this moment, Xiao Junhao's voice echoed in everyone's ears. Imperial Father, this Mingqing Hall has just been refurbished. Does it meet your expectations? Upon hearing the words Mingqing Hall, Jiang Peihuan couldn't help but look up. Before her was a grand main hall, its roof adorned with 8 5-clawed golden dragons sculpted from stone. At first glance, it was incredibly majestic and imposing. Emperor Qiming examined the Mingqing Hall in front of him carefully, with evident satisfaction in his eyes. You've done an excellent job. Xiao Juanhao had been under Emperor Qiming's criticism for some time, so hearing this sudden praise, his eyes were filled with surprise. After bowing to Emperor Qiming, he said excitedly, "Thank you, Imperial Father, for your praise. This is my duty. Imperial Father, watch out." Before Xiao Juanhao could finish speaking, everyone heard a loud bang. Xiao Junmo, standing next to Emperor Qiming, quickly pulled him aside upon hearing the sound. A large stone had fallen from where Emperor Qiming was standing. Upon closer inspection, it was the head of the dragon on the roof. It didn't stop there, several loud noises echoed again, and everyone retreated as the heads of the golden dragons on the Mingqing Hall broke off. Seeing this, Jiang Peihuan's eyes revealed surprise. She knew her elder brother might set up something in the Mingqing Hall, but she didn't expect him to be so ruthless. Nevertheless, Jiang Peihuan was quite delighted in her heart. Now, she was curious about how Xiao Juanhao would solve this crisis. What's happening? Emperor Qiming looked at the dragon head that nearly hit him, his face pale. Xiao Juanhao looked at the scene in front of him, his eyes filled with shock. For some reason, he felt that this incident was somehow related to Jiang Peihuan. Meeting Xiao Junhao's gaze, Jiang Peihuan looked clueless. At this moment, Emperor Qiming glared at Xiao Juanhao with anger. "Prince Qing, is this the result of your refurbishment?" Follow current novels on tarpnovelful.com. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.